Are we streaming to now, Janine?
You can start.
Thanks, Janine. Welcome everybody to the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee of February 2025. Thank God January's passed now. Statement that the Community Board 4 has a hybrid policy that can be found on our website. Board members are expected to attend meetings in person unless they have a disability and or extraordinary circumstance. Excused members and members of the public will still be able to participate virtually. Members who are joining via Zoom must leave their cameras on. This meeting is being streamed live on our YouTube channel and a transcript is being recorded. I'm Paul Devlin, co-chair of the committee. John Donnell Nolan is not with me tonight, so I get to solely chair all this fun. We can go around the room quickly and have committee members introduce themselves.
Joe Stucci, committee member.
Leslie Bogosian Murphy, community member.
Julie McDonald, committee member. Sanford Miller, committee member. Kevin Collins, committee member. Brian Weber, public member.
Excellent, thanks. We have two
Dolores
issues
Rubin on Zoom.
Dolores on Zoom. Hey, Dolores, thanks for joining us. I didn't see you. We have two issues on the agenda tonight. DCP is with us to present a land use application for Midtown South mixed use rezoning plan. Many of us have been through this a number of times. We also have a presentation and vote on the recertification of Balsley Park Kiosk at 57th and 9th Avenue. Since both land use committees will be opining on the Midtown South mixed use rezoning application, we've invited Chelsea Land Use Committee members to attend this meeting. DCP would only come to one of our meetings and not two, but we're glad that they came to one. We're grateful they're here. So I will present on behalf of Hell's Kitchen Land Use to Chelsea Land Use. We will gather all comments from both land use committees, present it to the full board. This certification is on March 31st, so we need to vote this out of our March meeting. And so that letter will be coming from there. Any questions on that process?
The certification is.
I mean, the certified is our commentary period for the process ends on March 31st. Also, as a side note for everybody to know, the leadership of the committees have been meeting with Community Board 5 leadership to also talk about the issues that kind of straddle the lines or the impacts of their district on our district and our district on their district. As this crosses the line, we have fewer blocks in the Midtown South mixed use rezoning portion. They have many more blocks than we do, but we are trying to work in conjunction with them so we have a unified message to the city.
And we always have more opinions. We always have more opinions.
And we have more opinions. We're a board of 50 with 100 opinions. Go ahead.
For process, can you just be a little bit more detailed? There's members from the public at home that aren't as aware with the letter that we will write in response to this.
Yeah, let me have them do the presentation and then, yeah, because we will be writing a letter. So let's just get started through the presentation and then open up from
Are
there.
you doing Balsley first?
Item 1 is DCP.
Wouldn't it make sense to get rid of this as fast? No, really?
Is there a motion on the floor to move the agenda item?
I will move just to.
I move.
Yeah, it's simple. Let's spend our time with the first one.
Yeah, there's gotta be more time on that. The motion to change the agenda to have item number 2 be item number 1, item 1 be number 2. Is there a vote in favor of that? I'll say aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. We will move to Balsley Park first. Sorry, you have to sit through another presentation. All right.
It's all right,
Balsley Park recertification of the kiosk. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time. Applicant will go through this in more detail. This is Balsley Park at the corner of 57th and 9th Avenue. It's technically a POP, a privately owned public space, that was part of the Sheffield construction project in 1972. In 1998, there was a kiosk added to that POP. And that kiosk needs recertification in order to operate. So is that enough of an introduction?
You did great.
Thank you. Onward.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you too.
I'm Richard Bass. I represent the applicant. I'm with Ackerman LLP. I have hard copies if board members want.
Why don't you give me one anyway so I can make notes.
Rich, I can bring up the presentation. Just let me know when to switch slides.
Okay, no, I know that. I just, I assume some people want hard copies. So the site is the block front on the east side of 9th Avenue between 56th and 57th Street. There's a kiosk in the park. It has to come up for renewal every 3 years for lots of reasons, both the fault of the applicant, and I'll blame city planning for overly processing a relatively simple application. We're here before you now. The kiosk, the only change to the park and the kiosk is to cut more windows in the kiosk, so there's more eyes on the park. The operator currently has a restaurant on 72nd and Broadway. It's going to be called, this kiosk is going to be called Cafe Rinaldi. He plans to operate it from 7 to 7 Monday through Fridays, 8 to 8 on the weekends. He's committed not only to provide coffee and food at this kiosk, but he also is committed to maintain the park. The Sheffield also, I think, I came before this committee several years ago.
2016.
Excuse me?
2016.
No, it's been more recent.
Oh, more
recently.
Oh, that one, sure, yeah.
When the discussion was to remove the kiosk, because every 3 years, this is an expensive venture just to go through the process for the condo. And since the COVID closed it down, it was more of a deficit than anything. This vendor really is excited about the kiosk. At the time I met last, we discussed putting in cameras and connecting that to the main security of the building. Because I assume you've all been there, things go on in that park that shouldn't be allowed. And there needs to be an active kiosk, which is why it was put in place in '98. Because prior to '98, it was a little den of iniquity. It's not much better now, but it's not as bad as what pre-'98. Having the kiosk reactivated with the cameras, with additional security, where the building will have their people patrol hourly, if necessary more. We ask the board's support for a renewal of the kiosk. In terms of the existing conditions, as soon as weather permits, there will be new paint, cleaning, replacement of slabs that have been uprooted by the roots. Any dead trees, any dead vegetation will be replaced. Well, not to brag on city planning, but the last
That's right, they're
time,
here, that's why they're here.
the last time we submitted something, we put on our plans that we were going to do this, replace the dead vegetation, and we were told to take it off. But it took them 2 months to tell us that. Our goal is to make the place reasonable, safe, and attractive. The kiosk the vendor is excited about being there. I spoke to Gail Brewer last night. She's going to hold an event on June 21st for the summer solstice. So she wants it clean, and the Sheffield leadership has committed that it will be clean. So as soon as we don't have snow, they'll start working on it. Also, it's hard to pull permits at DOB if they don't have this approval. Because right now, operating the kiosk would be a zoning and building violation.
Because the authorization ran out.
The authorization ran out. It would be really great to make the authorization every 5 years, but my wife reminds me it's called a living, so you'll get to see me every 3 years.
You go by the hour.
I go by the hour.
All right, questions from committee?
Thank you for your presentation. If I understood you correctly, there's gonna be someone coming into the empty kiosk that's there?
Right, they have a design, they wanna, the facade is gonna stay the same, they're gonna cut more windows in it. So that it's actually more eyes on the park.
When would you estimate completion of that to be ballpark?
That's not gonna take a lot of time, as soon as this is approved, they can then go to DOB and get the permit to do the work.
You have to have the authorization in order to You have to have the authorization in place in order to.
Right, right. They were talking about doing it illegally, and I advised them that really wasn't the best thing to
We'll
do.
strike that for the minutes, okay? But it'll be good, I utilized that park, and then, I was there last year, and Gabriel had a jet.
Right.
Together there.
She's gonna do the same thing this year.
Fair enough, I sometimes go there and read and what have you, so it'd be good to, that kiosk, maybe in the last 10 years, has been open maybe 10 weeks. Or something like that, it hasn't been open in.
Right, well, the last 4 or 5 years, because, we can blame everything on the pandemic, but, the vendor was not reliable. This is two young Italian guys. They love their store on Broadway and 72nd Street. They're excited about this location.
Well, it'll be a welcome addition, so thank you.
And they sent me an email yesterday that they're hoping that the aroma of the coffee will invite people in.
Especially from the bus stop right there.
Right.
Sorry. Jim.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Just want to hear more about security. Did they agree to more security stuff?
They agreed to put in security cameras, which there aren't now, and the security cameras would be hooked into the security desk in the Sheffield. They also have committed to having their security staff rotate through the park on a regular.
That didn't happen prior.
No,
Yeah, our biggest problem, this is the only Pops in the city that is not adjacent to the building.
Yeah.
And so that's why this concession about the cameras monitored from the building was a big push for us. We talked about this last.
and just so you know, I confirmed that it's on the plans. We were told to take it off the plans. Don't ask.
No, I won't ask. Why was it taken off the plans?
Yeah.
City planning wanted the parks staff wanted the plans to reflect what was approved last time, and the cameras were not on the plans last time. So what will happen is, we will install the cameras, and next time I come see you, 2028, we will legalize the cameras. My pleasure.
I appreciate it. So I know you're the messenger. This Balsley Park has been a very big sore spot in our community for, I would say, over 15 years. When you sat here just now, and again, you're the messenger, it's not you. But when you said, oh, we can put cameras in, we had talked about this. Every time you sit here, you say we're putting cameras in. Every time you sit here, you say we're gonna have security. And every time, not you, your representative sit here, you say we're gonna clean it up. And it's just been very frustrating, especially those of us who have walked to the Sheffield themselves, who have called the management, who have said, you have to take care of this, to people in the Park Vendome who have been on this time and time again. It's super frustrating because and this is just coincidence, I have to be the co-chair of Waterfront Parks and Environment on this board. We have in our district, one of the lowest number of open park spaces in our district. And this could be.
In the city.
In the city, I'm sorry, our district in the city. This could be a gem in Manhattan. This could be a gem, like this could be a really great park. And unfortunately, the Sheffield has, we think, not lived up to their responsibility of even very, very small, doable maintenance. There is a children's play area that no children go to because it's absolutely, it's.
Right, that's where the kids, the bigger kids smoke dope.
And yes, well, I'm glad you know that and you note that. And it's actually kind of scary that you're noting that and not doing anything.
I have spent many hours in the park. I know it personally.
And I used to spend, I don't as much anymore, but that's where I saw Al Pacino in your park. So I think it's a great park and it could be wonderful. But anyway, I'm a little hesitant, though I know the kiosk will be great, right? And it would be a awesome addition and it'd make it better. But I think it's Carl here. I thought, so this is when it was Eric Botcher's,
Right.
I guess, district, and now it's Gales, but we have been talking with Eric's office and they know the problems with this park. Anyway, I just wanted to say that for the record, because I feel like we're here time and time again about this park, and I don't know what will be different.
Well, two things. What I'd like to, and only because we have a home audience and I didn't go through the presentation, I just talked about it. Janine, can we go to the next slide? And then I'm gonna answer, I'll give you more information than has not been in any of the applications.
Okay.
Will not excuse it, but it will explain some of the issues around it.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So map showing the park, so all those trees are the park, it's from 57th to 56th Street on 9th Avenue. Next. Some of the pictures of the Balsley Park. Again, the design of the park is fixed. It was, approved in '98. Maybe the design doesn't work, but redoing the design of the park is a cost factor that the condo can afford. So what you see is what you get. It will be better maintained. Next slide. More pictures of the park. Here's the kiosk. And again, it shows only one opening. And the last time we had approval, we had to seek the city planning amended the definition of a kiosk. So this is technically two kiosks, which is kind of strange. It really operates as one kiosk, but the application itself is for two kiosks because that's the definition of a kiosk at certain square footage. Next slide. So here's some of the project background. Not on here, the developer sometime in the early part of this century gave the management to the Rose family to manage. Then the building went condo, and however that baton got dropped, the condo was unaware that they were responsible for the kiosk. Their attorneys, someone seriously dropped the ball. But when I brought it to their attention that, by the way, you're in violation of the renewal, then they retained me again. And that's why there's a big gap between 2006 and 2016. Why the gap between 2019 and now? Partly the blame of the building manager, who's now been dismissed, and they have better internal management, and partly because, I'll be honest, the city planning staff couldn't get out of their way. There's a more efficient way to handle renewals of kiosks. I think that's my last slide. Janine? Yeah, I think that's my last
I
slide.
have two follow,
And this is what the kiosk will look like with more windows.
sorry, you said the kiosk vendor will maintain the park? Can you explain that to me?
His commitment is to also go outside the kiosk and actually clean the park.
Like all the way down?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maintain the chairs, maintain the tables, but any major maintenance, the painting of the fences, the replacement of the movable equipment. By the way, that was another thing city planning made us change, because the plans showed that the movable chairs had moved, so we had to put them back in the same location as the previous plans. If I sound a little frustrated with this application,
You're sharing our frustration.
Yeah, you're sharing.
and I fully understand the disappointment in the maintenance of the park. That will change as soon as this is approved and winter is gone. And I'll be more than happy before Gail's party to meet with you at the park.
But hold on, Joe, let's go.
One more thing. You just said, that changing any element of the park, not huge changes, but small changes, you just said the cost factor the condo can't afford.
Right, so if, Jeannie, can we go back to the pictures of the park? One more. So like, for example, no, you went too far. This red painted wall. That was put in as additional seating, it's a low wall, people should sit on it and look. Is that really the best you know.
That was part
park-
of the redesign that happened.
That was the redesign in '98. Is that how we would design the park in 2025?
No.
Probably not. But to remove that and to remove all the plantings and to really redo the park, that's a bridge too far.
So let me just ask you, John, to follow up on Leslie's questions. I think at this point, and we've talked this many times before, we need a rep letter from your client with a schedule in it
Okay.
as part before the initial letter. Just like we do with the affordable housing stuff, we get a rep letter from the developer saying, and we will do A, B, or C by these dates. So let's get that clear, what it is when your installation happens. Because it's not just the kiosk, it's the other.
Right. What are the elements?
So does that sound reasonable to you?
Absolutely.
So Paul, not sure you've seen my hand, but I'd like to
I
just
see
make a
your hand,
motion.
Dolores. I was going
Nope.
around the room first.
But I wanted to just make a motion.
I will no, because I haven't had the chance to speak, and I haven't had the chance to call in the public. So I will not entertain a motion at this moment. So Dolores, if you have any comments on.
My comments is that keeping this set as a land use matter, we welcome the fact that we have the opportunity to go ahead and have this kiosk open again for many reasons, including security, including making the park more active. And the fact that the kiosk operator also wants to help maintain the park, and that the Sheffield management is now actively engaged in thinking about keeping this park. It's promising. We need to move ahead.
Thank you, Dolores. So I have some questions.
Sure, Paul.
Because I echo Leslie's concern that year after year, you come in and ask for things. We have multiple letters saying there's gonna be maintenance, there's gonna be security, there's gonna be cleaning, there's gonna be painting, and year after year, it doesn't happen. So now you're coming back to us and saying, we want this recertification of this kiosk, put more eyes on the plaza, and now you're saying the vendor is going to be responsible for the maintenance of the park. And that kind of contradicts every previous statement, and the frustration is that we would like to see a more solid commitment on maintenance and security. And I would like to ask if it's possible, put the security cameras up the moment it's certified, not when the vendor comes in,
Right.
not when the vendor puts them in. But instead install security cameras as soon as this recertification is approved and get it done.
Well, the previous operators also had the commitment to clean the park as part of the lease.
But the equipment wasn't with the vendor, the equipment was with the shop.
Right, but
And it's their space. And I'll tell you the root of my frustration is when I walk out the front door of Sheffield, that portion of the Pops, it's the same Pops. That portion of the Pops is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's maintained. It's clean. It's safe, right? I go a half a block away to the continuation of the Pops and it's covered in animal crap. And we have to worry about security in there. And we have, as you point out, teenagers smoking weed in the corner of the park, right? That's not happening outside of the door of the Sheffield. So why is it that the Sheffield can maintain the space that helps them sell their condos in front of their building, but can't have the same maintenance policy for the same Pops that is a half a block away? That's the root of my frustration.
I hear you.
And so you're coming asking for a recertification. Again, we're gonna put the same clauses in again, but we have no guarantee that it's going to happen, right? And so that's the frustration. So maybe what we can do is say, the revenue stream from the kiosk goes to the Pops funding of maintenance. So the condos budget has a line item, revenue from kiosk, maintenance for the Pop. And that goes to the 57th, 9th Avenue side of the Pops, not the entrance side of the Pops. So maybe one of the conditions we put in the letter is requesting the boards, the financial statements from the condo, that we see a maintenance commitment line item.
Dedicate the revenue.
And a dedicated, the revenue that's coming from the kiosk doesn't go to offset the condo fees, but instead goes to maintaining this park. So I think that that's something that we would like to request. All right, second thing is, so that commitment letter, I think is really important. The security cameras right away. And Worldwide Plaza has Pops. And what they do for security is the security guard has a handheld monitor and they walk the perimeter of the complex. And it's a regularly scheduled thing and they have to tap to show that they have physically walked past that space.
With a QR code.
With a QR, it's like there's a connector, they have like a device in their hand, they have to tap the device on the wall on 9th Avenue. So they leave the 8th Avenue side of the Pops and they have to walk to 9th Avenue and they tap to show that they have it. And there's a log that can be produced that shows the security people are actually walking through that every day.
We did it with the Watson shelter.
The Watson shelter, we did that. So we maybe want to add in more technical language support that the security is actually doing regular maintenance. In previous letters, there was supposed to be maintenance crew sent there 4 times a day. There's been no proof that somebody from Sheffield has gone to that 9th Avenue portion of their Pops 4 times a day. So we want to have some tracking on that and some accountability on that. All right, and I think that we need to put this into the commitment letter, because again, I think the concept of a kiosk with eyes on the plaza is supported, and as Dolores points out, from a land use perspective, it's a great thing. I'm excited you have a vendor who wants to operate there, but as Leslie points out, this has been going on since 1998. As Kevin points out, there's been 10 weeks of vendors in there for 10 years. We can't rely on a vendor to maintain this park. We can't rely on a vendor to put the
I
security.
think 10 weeks since 2020, I think so.
Yeah, well, what, and I also made a mistake, it was 1972 is now when this happens, 1978, I started off with the wrong year. So can you agree that if we were to put those sorts of terms into the commitment letter, that we see the condo board's finance statements that show commitment to maintenance funding as revenue, as offset to the revenue from the kiosk, regularly maintain, check in and security and accountability on the security passing through on a regular basis, and maintaining records on circulation of maintenance through the facility.
Well, it's circulation of maintenance and circulation with their security guard.
Right, so somebody has to be walking, so
No.
the security guard looking from a half a block away on a camera in the lobby isn't doing it.
Again, in my discussions with the new Sheffield leadership, is that the security guard gets out of the security booth and walks.
But unless they're held accountable with the device and they have to tap it and it shows a log and their paycheck is dependent on them actually doing it, it ain't gonna happen.
We will put that in a commitment letter, if the community board would like to put that in your resolution. You know, and just.
I personally would like to, we'll leave it up to the other committee members, but.
And, you know, the other side of this process is if we don't get the certification, the kiosk has to be demolished. And
I think we're not going down that road.
we don't want to go, and again, the condo was gonna go down that road and they found a vendor who they trust and seems to be, you know, won't disappoint us all.
Okay, that was my list.
I'm sorry, Leslie.
Leslie had her hand up, and then Kevin, and then we're gonna go to the public.
I don't think it should be part of the stipulation, but I do have, some issue when back, because it's their park, and obviously the developer got a lot of nice perks because of this, and they got to develop and make millions and millions more dollars way back when. For,
It was a bonus.
Actually, it's not. That's an urban myth. The park was created as part of the approval for the rezoning, but there wasn't a tie for FAR like the space next to the building. We got confirmation from city planning, we checked all the records, there is no tit for tat.
Let me give you the tip for tat,
yeah,
because there was a bonus in the Clinton Special Zoning District that allowed public open space. We removed that bonus in 1990. The only developer that built it was the Sheffield.
It's not according to what we foiled all of city planning's records. We got city planning to confirm it.
I can trump you. Mary Delia told me that. At 95, I was here for
I
that.
would love to see it. It's not what we.
We're not having a debate
Yeah,
over the
regardless of
pop and
that,
the granting.
what
bonus.
I
We
think
know,
I have,
we've done.
But it's still a commitment that the Sheffield will maintain this park.
It was pre-pops, that's.
I think what my issue is if you were New York City Park sitting here, or anyone else sitting here, to say that to fix a wall or to, you know, or for a developer like the Sheffield to kind of, I don't wanna say redesign the park, but to fix a wall or do this, you said it's a bridge too far.
Well, they're gonna fix the wall. They're gonna repaint it. What
Well,
I
You
was,
meant
That's not fixing.
redesign.
I meant
Yeah,
redesign.
like take down the wall and you say it's a bridge too far. I'm not speaking to the committee, I don't think it's a bridge too far, committee, considering all of the neglect that the Sheffield has done to this park over the years, and all the money that should have been spent taking care of this park was obviously not spent. that yes, there could be some, I don't wanna say redesign, because I think in people's heads, it's like a whole big redesign, I'm not saying that, maybe a tinkering of design. I think is not a bridge too far, I don't think it's a big ask, this is the part.
I'll open the door and maybe my client will smack my fingers. After this approval, I'd be more than happy to walk the park with Tom Balsley, who's the designer of the park, to see what your definition of tinkering and what our definition of
Gotcha.
tinkering is. When I meant removing the walls are retaining walls for the grass and the landscaping. So if you remove the walls
For the berm.
for the berm, so it's like, pulling the thread on the button.
No, I understand.
But I'd be more than happy, because I would like this problem to go away, and so that next time I come before you, 3 years from now, you'll all be smiling at me because we've been successful.
Can I suggest something? I wrote this letter from 2016, and there's your commitment letter from 2016 too. This needs to have time, specific dates in it. I think that's what's missing here if you read this doc. Let's have those dates and let's work that out before. Your commitment letter doesn't have dates in it. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that by this date or that date. It just says we're going to do this. And I think having.
And the same points as we're
Yeah,
talking about.
the same ones we're talking about, so let's get them quantified by which dates and be done with it, so there's expectations that can be met. And if they're not, then we go back to city planning saying there's a commitment letter and they didn't do this, please help us. Okay.
Very quick question. You mentioned the hours, the days and hours of operation of the kiosk vendor will be open. Do you be kind enough to repeat that?
Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. And the weekends 8 to 8. And obviously, if he's really successful, those hours might, increase, but that's.
I'm just gonna take into account the different months with the park has different hours, like, so if it's 8 to 8 during October to April, the park closes at 7. So it might only be external facing as opposed to internal facing.
Well, the kiosk, you can access the kiosk from the sidewalk.
That's what I'm saying,
Right.
external
Right.
facing, but not internal facing.
The windows they're creating will also be looking into the park.
Gotcha. Then after, if you want to have the question for the public speak, I would then make a motion saying we approve it subject to condition of security.
Let's hear from the public first.
I think there are people in the room too.
Okay, are there others in the room who want to speak on this topic? No, sir, please. So if you give your name.
My name is David Landay. I live in the Park Vendome. I see Balsley Park every day. I walk my dog. And it sucks. I cannot believe the condition that your people leave that park. Especially when this was just mentioned, to walk down the street and see how you keep space in front of the Sheffield. It is a, excuse me, fucking tragedy. It is saying, we're rich, you're poor, go F yourself. We got extra floors by putting this park here for the public. We got that kind of money, and what we're giving you back is a finger. Excuse my French, but that's the reality of it. When you talk about painting it, every time they paint, whatever paint they use, the concrete underneath keeps peeling off. So year after year, whatever was painted within months looks awful. There is no consideration to reality other than, oh, we made it look good today. We talk about the planting. The kiosk is going to keep it up. What are they keeping up? The plantings in that park are ridiculous. Look at the plantings in front of the Sheffield. Same environment. Look at the plantings in the park, in the Balsley Park. They're non-existent. They're dying. They're the cheapest crap that could be put there. Not the good quality stuff that's in front of the Sheffield. I don't understand that this is allowed to happen. I don't understand that the Sheffield got that space and then you tell me that they didn't even know when it went condo about their obligation. I have trouble believing any of this stuff. I know this isn't on you, but I have a lot of trouble with this building and the way it's handled and the way it treats the rest of us. And when I say that, I'm specifically talking about Balsley Park and the way it's not meant to. So just to talk about maintaining it, and not replanting it and making it look like a park. Instead of all those dead areas on the hill, all those dead areas around the bottoms of the roots of the trees, there's no grass. And when there is grass, it's allowed to grow, I'll show you a picture, 7, 8 inches high. None of this makes any sense. So I think you guys, the committee, really need to put strong things, requirements into this approval. It gets the park back to what it should be, a major asset for the neighborhood. And it's not. You can talk about securities and cameras. I'm in that park all the time. I have never seen a problem that would require a camera. Never. But does the water fountain work since COVID? What was that, 4 years ago, and the water fountain still doesn't work? It just, F you is all I see when I get near that park.
Thank you.
So I hope you put in really stringent requirement with something that makes, if you don't do this, this is what happens. And I think that's what keeps getting missed here. From what I'm hearing, that I would suggest you do something that really puts teeth into what this agreement is, but also bring that park back to what it could be. Do I agree with the initial design, that you got the wall and all that empty space behind it? And then there's those pillars and all that space behind it that is nothing but a garbage place. Everybody throws their crap in it and the Sheffield never picks it up. Never. Just look through the walls and you see it. And then you see on the other side, you see the Park Vendome Park. It's like nice or could be nice, garbage, what it could be. It's just a little effort. We're not talking about a lot of effort here. Grass seed. So, but I come back to not only requiring that it be brought up, but it be actually maintained, and if it isn't, there should be some teeth. And not just that the kiosk goes away, but something that the Sheffield would really say, okay, we gotta do this, guys. We're not just being good guys here, it's gonna cost us major if we don't do it. And that's what I suggest you, A, set in a real requirement, and I come back to the plantings as a good example. Just the same quality as the Sheffield, an easy definition. No different. Put the plantings that are there, put them in the park. Very simple. We're not talking about acres and acres here. We're talking about a small space.
Thank you.
So nothing I'm talking about is what I think of as unreasonable, just to make it look like the original design when it was meant to be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room?
Question following that, what are some teeth you cannot the letter?
Great question. One of the things that, I thought about before tonight, which clearly came up in these my comments, is to ask for review of the kind of financial documents to show proof of funding of the maintenance of the park. You're gonna have a revenue line item from the kiosk. I want to see an expenditure line item for maintenance of the park. Right, I want
They don't do that?
Well, if they don't do that, then the Grimaldi's brothers, they'll shut down their shop and then the revenue stream stops. Like, if they don't, if this doesn't, if we certify and then they violate the certification and the certification is withdrawn, the business has to shut down. Right?
So, just FYI, in the letter from 2016, there are 3 pages about planting plan and species listing.
It's not that, Joe, it's always there, it should be not done.
No, I'm saying, we have this,
Yeah.
right? So we should also include that in the letter to re-up it, because it's
Sure.
whatever's done. But then I think what the public just said is that add in the maintenance, the water fountain, irrigation. In other words, you can't just put something and walk away from it. That's the problem.
But that's what's been happening.
I know.
It just has a utility.
So why don't you just put a bold stipulation in it, it's like we will not renew next time? Unless we
Or-
change.
I would go further. I think we should do something. I think Rachel's issue about what happens if they don't. We have to ask city planning and talk to them directly, talk about, it's for a period of time and then revoke.
So, I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, but listen to what you're saying. Option A could be, but I don't think we want to put any committee board that position, put money in an escrow account, and if you don't do it, then we'll go out and hire a vendor. B could be that you have to show CB4 before this is blessed, that you entered into a contract, well, what are vendors? Vendor A for grass, vendor B for upkeep, vendor C, that those contracts are in place.
I'm pretty sure they have contracts with landscaping companies that do the plaza next to the building. So we should just ask for the same thing to happen here.
For this area, for this exact
Does
area.
that make sense?
Well, what other teeth can a committee board do, right?
Well, I know that they were talking to the contractors and we can share those contracts. You know, redacted for certain information to show that, you know, the plantings are going in, the maintenance is going in, the repairing of the fountains going in. The issues that are in the 2016 letter.
It just seems to me like this letter's gotta be more detailed, with more information and more dates. And I say this over and over. And then what happens on the accountability side if the dates are not met? So I ask you, as the land use attorney, what is your suggestion to respond to this kind of concern?
I honestly don't have an answer for
So
you.
let me ask the fellow over there. Spots are, just a thought, you're here for something else, obviously. And these pops are really the problem. Some pops are, some pops are not, right? What are can you give us some direction or thoughts on how we can assist to make this work?
Well, I mean, I think if we're talking about what is possible via
I'm sorry, can you just,
Yes.
for the record, just.
Oh, who are you?
Sorry. Hi.
Everybody knows who you are.
Eric Osford, Director of the Manhattan Office and Department of City Planning. And, you know, in terms of strictly what the zoning permits, you know, I believe this is the kiosk application comes, it is the term is granted for the
Right.
3-year period, and then the next opportunity to review the appropriateness comes 3 years later. I would say that, you know, we encourage the board to provide your perspective on the, you know, the long-term.
So I'm asking, when you have non-performing pops, and you've done this reviews before,
Yeah.
you notice something, you referred to DOB, I know they issued violations.
Yeah.
How do you work with DOB on resolving pops that are not being maintained? Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, we have a really close working relationship with DOB on POPs. We're not the enforcement agency, but, you know, we do speak regularly with them. We have a POPs team that, you know, at city planning that works citywide on all POPs. And, you know, when we are made aware of complaints or non-compliances, or that conditions aren't in the, you know, amenities aren't present that are supposed to be, we do work with DOB and put this to them, and, you know, they, in contrast, I think, to the past, they are, you know, pretty aggressive about going out and inspecting POPs now and issuing violations where they find non-compliances or things that are not maintained or provided that are supposed to be. So, and, you know, again, if the board provides that information to us, you know, we're happy to follow up on that and coordinate with DOB to ensure that, you know, they're following through.
So I want to ask a little bit of a follow-up on that, because we gave compliance letters that they are in compliance with POPs, right? Because there's a design plan, there's a planting plan.
14 chairs.
There's 14 chairs, all that is in compliance. But part of the POPs is not the security and maintenance necessarily. So when DOB comes in and reviews, everything is compliant. But it's not compliant to the conditions of certification of the kiosk. So how can we link those?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I would have to look at the exact text, and other members of the DCP team, feel free to jump in, but the,
And it's like.
yeah, you know, I mean, when we do review things like open air cafes and kiosks, you know, we are looking at the full plaza. You know, I will say that, I mean, we're aware of the long-term maintenance issues with this POPs. It, I think, does come down to the fact that, Joe, as you said, it's one of the POPs that is not directly attached to the building, with which is associated, so, you know, you don't have the incentive perhaps to, you know, have the eyes on the space. You know, we have worked with this applicant to try to address some of these issues. You know, we are limited by what the text allows us to do in terms of like pressing for, you know, things like a full redesign or something like that. So, you know, but yeah.
We do have one other member of the public online who's been waiting patiently, so I'd like to call on Anita. Anita, you should be able to speak now, if you're on mute. Anita
I'm bring-
McDonough used to.
Yeah, I'm bringing her over.
Yeah, she's there. She's here,
Oh,
Janine.
oh, okay.
Go ahead, Anita. Anita, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm here, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I just I wanted to say good evening, the esteemed members of the Chelsea Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee. And I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. Today, I question the committee because in 2015, the Park Vendome was informed that the kiosk is a city agreement which needs the approval of the Hearst Corporation, the Park Vendome, and the Sheffield in order to authorize the operation of the kiosk. So we have a Zelda agreement. And for the Sheffield to change anything would mean that they would be altering the Zelda agreement. They have not approached us about altering our Zelda agreement. Ronnie Eldridge, and at that time, who was the president of the Sheffield at that time, and she claimed that Richard Bass was her attorney. That's what she wrote to us. But I think you're an architect, not an attorney. Is that
No,
true?
I'm an urban planner.
You're an
I'm
urban
a law school
planner.
dropout.
Right. Right. Okay. You approached the Park Vendome and you spoke to us in advance about your intentions for Balsley Park and the kiosk. And I don't understand why the same protocol isn't being adhered to. I mean, we even received a release document from the Sheffield that we were asked to sign so that they could send it to city planning. What happened in 10 years that you are now independent and can decide to do whatever you want to do in Balsley Park? What happened to the Zelda? Okay.
We're not changing the Zelda, we're not changing anything in the park.
Well, you said
the-
in
the
terms of
only-
protocol you are. It's
only thing
the
that's
kiosk
being
is supposed to be, pardon?
The
All right,
only thing
anyway,
that's,
I'll just keep moving on. Everything that I'm speaking about today, I sent in advance to Jesse and Janine. So I hope they shared it with the committee so that you could see the documents that I'm talking about.
and if you could share it with me, that would be helpful.
Okay, I did.
Janine, the items in the Dropbox, can you make sure that Ms. Bass sees them or receives a copy of them?
Okay, sure.
Thank you.
And I did some research and I wanted to point out a few things. In 2005, the then CB4 chair, his name was Lee Compton, wrote to Amanda Burden requesting improved plantings along with a continued commitment to general maintenance. And at that time in his letter, he noted chip paint in the park. Then in 2016, J.D. Nolan and Dolores Rubin wrote to the Honorable Carl Weisbrod of City Planning and said to deny the kiosk application because of the poor maintenance of the park, the playground, the planting beds, and the cleanliness. They also noted that there should be signage and that a camera should be installed. In 2021, Lowell Kern, the then chair, wrote directly to the Sheffield because of the constant state of disrepair. So I also sent a video. I don't know if anyone had a chance to see the video that I forwarded to the committee. Yes? No?
Yeah, I saw that it was in the Dropbox.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, I did.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's under 3 minutes. And what it shows is a boxing match in the children's playground. And the children's playground is if you see the playground, it used to have padding on the bottom of the playground. I mean, that padding has holes in it. And we've been discussing for such a long time to replace the padding in the children's playground so that children can go in there. It's dangerous because it becomes a trip and fall hazard. Should a child fall, they're not going to fall in the padding. They're going to fall onto the pavement below. Anyway, I sent some pictures, which I took yesterday, and some of the pictures point out the chip paint, the same chip paint, which was mentioned 20 years ago in a letter to city planning. And I also showed that there is some very small signage. Some of that signage is painted over. I also showed that the planting beds are still filthy. I even showed how one of the planting beds has an orange traffic cone in it. So you also see rat burrows galore in the planting beds, and lots of sticks and bricks and debris and crap. Nothing is cleaned up. So yes, I agree, a security camera would be necessary. And I'm asking the committee this evening, how do we hold the Sheffield responsible? How can we make them accountable? I mean, I feel as if this goes on year after year after year, and I know you're discussing it and we're making good progress, but as Mr. Landry said earlier, it's sad that it's the Sheffield does not feel that it's even necessary to go to their neighbor and speak to their neighbor and say, by the way, we're going to have a hearing and we would like to let you know so that you could be there and you could participate with us, or do what they did in the past. Just invite us to the Sheffield and talk to us. Anyway, it's the neighborly thing to do. We do that with other committees. And I thank you all for listening to me. And, I thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you, Anita. No other commentary?
This was our short item.
This was our short item. I said it wasn't gonna be the short
I
item.
have a question for Richard. We have a whole list of items here, right? And given the fact that there are things that are just long-term aggravated, not resolved. In terms of timing on the certification, is there any reason that you could not voluntarily agree to return to us in a month? And these items can be sewn up with documents as opposed to just us taking a position that you're gonna do something. Because what you heard from Republic, David, and you heard from Anita and everybody else, it's letter. She went through 4 community board chairs. That's a lot. Okay, so that you could actually, we can return with like concrete, and here's the landscaping contractor, and here's the things that are gonna be done, and here's the dates for this. I think this will give much more comfort to people than just a letter with commitments.
I wanna echo Joe's words. I'm inclined, no matter what, though I know the kiosk will be a great addition.
Right.
I would love it. I'm not voting for this. I'm not going to vote on this letter because we have to stop this. We have to keep saying, oh yeah, you're gonna come back, you're gonna do this, thanks. And then 5 years from now, nothing's done. And then you come back, no, we're gonna do it. We'll do it this time. This time we're doing it. 5 years, not done. Now you're here like a 4th time. No. Guys, this year we're doing it. What are we, idiots? Like.
So let me ask the question, if we were to table this and move it to next month, would you be willing to come back with the updated application that incorporates a lot of the things you've heard us talk about tonight?
Not application so much as all the documents that
So, we need to have agreements in place.
Sure.
And then
Pause.
right, so would you be willing to come back next month?
I
and
would
get these agreements in
happy to
place?
come back next month. I'll bring, Balsley, who can go into greater details about the plantings and.
We don't need more.
Not to beat Mr. Balls.
Yeah.
Trust me, if you don't need time.
We don't need more speeches and words.
Yeah, we need speeches, we need documentation action.
And a schedule to,
Right.
the commitments on the things we've talked about them all, I'm not gonna repeat them. But verbally, not verbal, contracts, show these things are being done, make it a part, and the question I asked earlier is how do we give this teeth? is because the POPs, the DOB comes and says they're all in compliance. How can we attach these commitments to the certification such that when DOB comes out and says they're in compliant, we can say, no, they're not, because these conditions.
We asked with DCP to attach,
Can we add
it
the
as part of
walkthrough
our.
that he offered?
What?
He offered a walkthrough.
Yeah,
Can we put that down to you within this month?
yes.
Is that okay?
Yeah, my office is on.
I'll buy
15th Street.
coffee and then we can go.
I'll buy coffee.
So let me, can I make the table till next month, and Mr. Bass, in the meantime, will consult with his client and meet with committee chairs and do a walkthrough with waterfront parks and.
Can I just make a suggestion, only if it's friendly, if you send out, because I think we gotta be clear what we're asking you to come back with, if you send out to the committees, and today's Wednesday, like a draft.
Got the bullets.
Yeah, and people, then ask the committee to respond by Friday, get it to you over the weekend by Monday. I think it'd be helpful if the committee gets it the Friday before the next meeting, which is on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Not to get it.
When is your next meeting?
Second month from today.
Second Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
Second Wednesday of the month.
Okay.
But not so we get it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon of the meeting, we get it the Friday before.
Right.
And then also that any walkthrough, that every member of the committee is invited to the walkthrough.
Yeah, everybody from the committee.
So how are you gonna convey that, date and time for the walkthrough?
He can, with the
Jesse-
office.
Jesse.
And then we can.
So any member of the committee who's so inclined, available, they can come.
Huh? You live there near too.
I live near there. I actually have a question that might be actually TPC since we're talking about a walkthrough. I don't know if it's TPC, so tell me if not. At the 56th side end of the park. I don't know if you've seen for a while, there was the concrete like on at the end of the pedestrian walk attached to the car street. It was open and like kind of fuming, and someone actually put a handwritten note saying, my pet's paws are, like being hurt.
Is it
by
steam
the-"
leak?
Yeah, it's something like that.
That's
So
called
they
steam
actually
leak.
had to just cover it up, and I don't know if that foundation underneath is connected.
We can.
There's a motion on the table, motion on the floor to table this.
Seconded.
Seconded, can I have a vote on the motion? Everybody in favor of tabling?
Yeah.
Anybody
Hi,
opposed
Paul.
to tabling?
Sorry, I have a quick note. Can we just confirm that there's quorum now?
Yeah, you have quorum, yes, Rachel is in the room, we have quorum, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, that's table, thank you for the short item of the agenda being moved first.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I really wanted to hear the presentation.
You can stay, you don't have to leave, just,
My wife just came in. I'm gonna go home.
yeah, thanks, good for you. All right, so we will now move on to item number 2, the Department of City Planning is to present on the land use application for Midtown South Mixed Use Zone. Richard sorry, you.
So he's doing a time, that's all, and then he's gonna send it to.
But yeah, the chairs should set the time.
I know.
Okay. Yes, okay, let's move along, we're gonna be here all
Sorry.
night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good luck, Rachel.
Okay, awesome, thanks. And Rachel is gonna take bullets and send them along. Great.
It's gonna be sent around to the committee, so you're gonna have.
Yes, yes.
Just gonna send them.
Kind of engineer just to get
Me, document Jesse, circulate.
So Andy, you were kind of enjoying that because you know that when you spend all that effort on the first item, the second one just goes by.
Yeah, I'm just gonna like disassociate for the next 2 hours.
It's so simple though. All right, let us proceed.
Great, will Janine be sharing the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Janine, can we start the presentation on the Midtown South mixed use, please? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm Nabila Malik. I'm the Deputy Director of the Manhattan office at the Department of City Planning. I see some familiar faces. I used to be the CB4 liaison, so we're actually, there's a line of CB4 liaisons here with us, including our director, Eric Botsford, and then our MSMX project team, which includes our co-leads, Andy Cantu, Oscar Moyudin, and we're joined by Ezra Moser online. and of course, Abby Ryder, our newest CB4 liaison. So I just want to take a moment to say we're excited to be here to share the Midtown South Mixed Use Plan, MSMX. As some of you know, we've been working on this for quite some time. And this plan is really a result of several years of study and engagement with local stakeholders, including CB4. And so just want to say thank you for your thoughtful participation and feedback to date, and looking forward to continuing to work with you as we move through the public review process. Can we go to the next slide, please? All right, so I'm just going to provide a quick overview before turning it over to Andy. But the MSMX plan really is laying the foundation for a more vibrant mixed-use neighborhood where housing, a strong economy, and a high-quality public realm can coexist. And getting into sort of the big picture goals of the proposal. Firstly, we really want to foster this 24/7 mixed-use neighborhood by creating opportunities for more housing, putting into place new zoning districts where housing is either restricted or entirely not permitted today. And the plan will use mandatory inclusionary housing, MIH, to ensure that new and converted buildings include permanently income restricted homes. The plan will also allow for community facility uses such as schools, libraries, and museums, which are not permitted today. And at the same time, we of course want to balance housing with economic activity. And so really ensuring that we're able to use both zoning and non-zoning tools to allow for an easier mixing of uses and to support key industries. And finally, we're focused on improving the quality of life here, enhancing street activity, creating more inviting public spaces, and making the neighborhood a place to gather day or night. And as part of this effort, we're introducing incentives to improve transit, create public spaces, and introduce new urban design rules that reflect the existing locked character of Midtown South. Next slide, please. So to facilitate this plan, we are seeking two land use actions, a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment. We're really excited that the proposed zoning map amendment gets to use new zoning tools created out of the City of Yes for economic opportunity and housing opportunity by introducing mixed use districts that pair new manufacturing districts with new high density residential districts. And Midtown South would be the first place in the city to have these new districts. And we think it's the perfect place to lead the way. Meanwhile, the text amendment would establish a new special district, which would include the urban design controls that I mentioned and the incentives for transit and public space. The text amendment would also map MIH district-wide, and taken together, these actions are projected to create around 9,700 new homes, including up to 2,900 permanently income restricted homes. Next slide, please. So just to walk you through our agenda for today's presentation, we'll introduce the study area, provide some important background context, and go over the existing conditions. We'll also touch on our engagement work and how that engagement shaped our proposal. And then, of course, conclude by covering the proposal itself. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andy.
Thanks. Can we go to the next slide, please? Great. So, quickly for those who aren't super familiar, just to introduce everyone to the study area, we're talking about these 4 non-contiguous manufacturing zone areas that you see in yellow. We'll be referring to these based on their ordinal directions: northwest, northeast, southeast, southwest. The planned area is mostly in Community District 5, but like Paul said, a portion of the northwest and southwest are in Community District 4. Most of the areas represented by Councilmember Botcher, except for the northeast, which is represented by Councilmember Keith Powers. Next slide. So the study area outlined in black is about 42 blocks in Midtown South. Again, manufacturing zoned areas largely in place since 1961 or the early 70s, bounded on the north by 40th Street, south 23rd Street, east 5th Avenue, and on the west to 8th Avenue. A portion of the southeast is within the Ladies Mile Historic District and the Madison Square North Historic District, which you can sort of see in the light purple. We sort of shaded in the CB5 portion, so the CB4 portion of the study area really pops in the yellow. Next slide. So next, we're going to delve into a little bit of background and some of the economic and policy considerations that sort of underpin the plan. And next one. Great. So, the initial development of Midtown South was really spurred by the Commissioner's Plan of 1911, which really laid out the street grid of New York City. At the beginning, this developed as more of a sort of like entertainment district. And then with the introduction of Penn Station in 1910, it really evolved into the city's really premier manufacturing district. The area really experienced peak manufacturing just prior to World War II, where it was the center of the garment and wholesale sectors, which became at the time New York City's largest industries by jobs and firms. But after the war, changes in automation, a lot of other macroeconomic factors like outsourcing, offshoring, led to a really dramatic decline in New York City's fashion manufacturing businesses. The 1961 zoning resolution, which is what we still operate under today, that same basic framework, designated these 4 areas as high-intensity manufacturing and commercial areas. And the 1987 designation of the Special Garment Center District, which is really focused on the Northwest quadrant, aimed to insulate a lot of those legacy remaining garment manufacturing businesses from competition for loft space by putting in place restrictions on non-manufacturing uses. In 2018, which I'm sure you all remember, we conducted another rezoning of the garment district. It had become apparent that a lot of these economic changes to the garment and fashion industries meant that the regulations that had been preferencing manufacturing uses up until that time were not really doing their job. They weren't really slowing the decline of manufacturing and sometimes presented some unforeseen challenges related to compliance and enforcement. And so we passed a 2018 zoning text amendment to remove some of those preservation requirements for manufacturing, and we allowed a wider range of uses in the garment center. And so as I'll discuss over the following slides, this brings us where to today, where a lot of recent economic trends required, a much closer look at MSMX and really point to a need to allowing a broader range of uses that span light industrial, commercial, residential, to really help stabilize and further enliven the area. So we'll stay on this slide for 1 second. I don't have to tell all of you, COVID-19 really changed the landscape. really changed the way how New Yorkers commute and live and work. This shift really impacted the commercial office space sector really significantly, hybrid work, reducing the demand for traditional office space. And this has really impacted the MSNX plan area in particular. There's most of the plan area's office space is either Class B or Class C. And we've seen really dramatic office vacancy rates as a result, up to 19 or 20% in some cases. Next slide. So despite COVID's impacts, New York City has actually seen tremendous job growth over the last two decades, but obviously housing development has not kept pace. Most of the new housing that has been built has been concentrated in just a few neighborhoods. We face a really severe
This is
housing.
one, this is it, this is where here.
Excuse me?
We're the district where we've seen the most housing increases.
Yeah, no, absolutely, you have, not
by
that's not
accident.
challenging that, yeah.
Some people did.
New York City, as a whole, faces a really acute, housing crisis. I don't have to tell you all that either. We're at a historically low, availability rate for residential units, 1.4%, rental vacancy rate at the moment citywide, which is really, historically low. And so because demand for housing is greater than the supply of housing, we're experiencing, extraordinarily high housing costs. And these factors, we think, really provide a strong impetus for revisiting, taking a really close and fresh look at Midtown South to help reposition it for a much more active, resilient future. Next slide. So a key part of this process, first and foremost, is just to understand what are the conditions today, what are the on-the-ground conditions there right now, and why it makes the area such an obvious candidate for introducing housing and expanding the range of uses. Next slide. So MSNX plan area, probably located in the most transit dense part of the entire country. We have 15 subway lines, Long Island Railroad, PATH, New Jersey Transit, Metro North, Amtrak, Port Authority, just, a few steps away. Next slide. This map shows central Manhattan and highlights how the study area, which is outlined in black, is sort of more of a southerly extension of the core sort of Midtown office market. Red in this image is sort of purely commercial uses. So really sort of part of that core Midtown office market. And then the two southerly quadrants still dominated by commercial office, but obviously a little bit more marbled with some institutional, residential, and sort of lower scale manufacturing uses mixed in. Next slide. So this is the zoning today. Outdated zoning has really prevented the planned area from evolving into a more mixed use area. The planned area are really these four islands of manufacturing zoning districts represented in purple that are surrounded by higher density commercial and residential uses shown in red and yellow. A lot of the area was zoned M16 many years ago. M16 manufacturing zones, which have a maximum FAR of 10. You'll see things like warehouses, retail, office space primarily, entertainment venues, and obviously some light manufacturing mixed in. But a lot of uses are restricted, like residential, like we said, but also schools, libraries, museums, and the things that sort of make neighborhoods. There's also a small section in the southwest that's zoned M16D, where in 2011, a zoning update allowed for some limited housing, but prioritized commercial and light industrial on larger lots. Next slide. So knowing that the current zoning doesn't allow housing as of right, it's not surprising that there are relatively few homes here. There are only about 2,300 residential units, compared to about 75,000 residential units within a 10-minute walk. So most of the homes you do see are legally conforming, so existing before 1961 zoning was put in place, or legalized under the loft law. Those are sort of the two flavors of most of the residences that we see.
Or variances.
Excuse me?
Or variances.
There's one, yeah, there's a couple of BSA variances, there's one CPC special permit, but most of them are either pre-existing, non-conforming, or loft law. And so if you look at this map, you'll see there's a clear difference. The dark red dots just outside the planned area include a lot of housing, while within the planned area, housing is relatively sparse. And this relative absence of residential life definitely makes itself felt on the ground, especially after work hours when there are fewer people on the streets, fewer people patronizing the area's businesses, and generally fewer people just keeping eyes on the street. And it definitely, impacts the quality of life of the area. Next slide. So looking at built density for a moment, this map shows the range of existing built FAR. Generally, darker colors are buildings with lower FARs and warm colors are higher built FARs. So the densities in the planned area reflect, we think, a concentration of a lot of pre-1961 buildings. So this area is already very, very dense. A lot of the buildings are overbuilt pursuant to current zoning. And the current maximum permitted FAR for the planned area is generally 10, like I said earlier, but you can see that because of all those pre-1961 buildings, you have FARs well above that, 15, 20, 25. We even have some buildings in the 40 FAR range. So this area is already very dense. Next slide. So we wanted to show you what this level of density looks like in practice. The plan areas fabric reflects a variety of eras and typologies. The overwhelming majority of these buildings predate modern zoning, and it's evident that they're already very low density and built before the advent of FAR as sort of a framework that we use. But even though these buildings can reach 30, 35, 40 FAR, in context, they don't really stand out that dramatically when experienced from the pedestrian perspective. As you can see on the far left, you have a 24 FAR building that appears very contextual, very part and parcel of the existing urban fabric. Next slide. And this build density correlates with a really high concentration of economic activity. The study area is itself a really important regional jobs hub. There are about 135,000 jobs just in the study area, and a little over 7,500 individual businesses. So for the most part, the plan area experienced job growth over the last decade that outpaced both the city and the national averages. Next slide. But while there has been strong job growth overall, the job landscape has evolved in terms of the mix of jobs and industries that are there. Jobs in manufacturing and wholesale sectors have declined by 30% over the last 10 years. Fashion, manufacturing, wholesale jobs even more dramatically. We're looking at about a 60% decline in those sectors. But what's risen in their place is a really strong creative and tech sector. The city currently has some non-zoning and programmatic tools to support fashion manufacturing, and we'll be continuing to sort of explore what types of tools we can incorporate into this plan as well. Next slide. So as we formulated this plan, you know, a key component was our community engagement process. I just want to talk about that for one brief moment before we get to the actual proposal itself. Next slide. So we actually started public engagement for this plan way back in October of 2023. We posted dozens of info sessions, roundtables, one-on-one conversations with stakeholders, outreach through our website, office hours, an online survey, et cetera, et cetera. And from all those conversations, 6 key community priorities emerged for the study area. 1, increase opportunities for affordable housing. 2, the need to balance housing with economic opportunities. 3, ensure that building forms are contextual with the loft character. 4, encourage more retail and local services. 5, invest in the public realm like open space, streets, etc. And 6, address public safety concerns. Next slide. And so those 6 priorities became a roadmap for us and directly shaped sort of the approach that we took with our MS&X plan. Next slide. So we're able to take these 6 priorities, distill them into the 3 planning principles that we're carrying forward into our proposal: creating vibrant communities, supporting critical economic activity, and enhancing neighborhood character. And so these priorities combined are what we heard during engagement, and our research takeaways form the core of our plan. Next slide. So now that I've gone through all of that preamble, we're taking you straight to the proposal. Next slide. So as Nabila noted at the top of the presentation, the 2 land use actions that we're proposing are a zoning map amendment and a zoning text amendment. The zoning map amendment would rezone all of the existing M1 districts in the MS&X plan into paired mixed-use commercial manufacturing and residential districts. On top of that, the zoning map amendment would establish the new special Midtown South mixed-use district, which would get the abbreviation MSX in zoning. The second action, the zoning text amendment, would map MIH across the entire plan area. And then again, these would be the first MIH districts to be mapped in central high-density parts of Midtown Manhattan. The text amendment would also establish sort of bespoke special district regulations. These would include bulk requirements to enhance and reinforce the loft character, which we'll illustrate in the following slides. Next slide.
The final bullet point.
Oh yeah, sorry, if we can go back. So the final thing, the final part of the text amendment would be to remove restrictions on residential conversions in the C64M district, which is not located in the study area proper. It's part of a special garment center district just to the west of 8th Avenue across from the northwest quadrant. Today, there's a restriction on conversions in buildings over 70,000 square feet. We would remove that restriction.
That's RS from 2018.
Yes, so that's just so everyone knows that contextually, that's 3054.
I'm sorry. Let me finish that. Okay. Just we'll open up too much. I'm sorry. Apologies.
I can point out the area and when we get to the next.
Thanks for pointing out that point.
The next slide. Next slide, please.
Why?
So here's what the zoning districts would look like on the map. Again, we're proposing these new paired high-density mixed-use districts that were created as part of City of Yes, and they come in 3 basic pairings: M19A R12, M18A R12, and M18A R11. And over the following slides, I'll walk you through what each of these mean in a little bit more detail. Next slide. So the first paired district we'll cover is M19A R12, which will be mapped across the entirety of the northern 2 quadrants, as well as a portion of the southwest quadrant that would wrap around the future Penn Station expansion. This paired district allows a maximum FAR of 15 for commercial, light manufacturing, and community facility uses, and an FAR of 18 for residential uses with MIH.
And it's currently 10 1 12, right?
Correct. Apart from FAR, all of the zoning districts in the special Midtown South Mixed Use District would have the same use and building envelope regulations, which we'll go over in the next series of slides. Next slide, please. So we're going to take a look at what types of buildings could result from the paired M19A R12 district. This is a view of the northwest area looking north from Penn Station towards 42nd Street. The gray buildings are existing buildings and the yellow buildings depict redevelopment that could occur under the proposed regulations. And this is what's studied in our environmental.
Just an orientation like to.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the northwest quadrant. This is looking northeast roughly from about 42nd Street. Yeah, so that's.
No,
That's 8th Avenue.
That's about
right
8th
there.
Avenue right there that Paul is.
That's
that's 8th Avenue.
Yeah,
That's 8th Avenue tall.
Looking northeast from 34th Street.
From about 34th.
sorry, 34th.
Right.
This is not it, this is 9th Avenue.
No, that's 8th.
That's it.
This one is.
The building that is 245 feet in gray is, I think, where the New Yorker Hotel is. And then if you travel north, and then that's 315 is the Sam Chang on the corner of 36th and 8th Avenue. That helps orient people.
Is that accurate?
Yeah.
And where the cursor is right now is the
That's the north, yeah.
northeast corner of 36th and 8th Avenue.
Right, but the New York is on the northwest.
Right, that's lower down.
This is
Lower
this
down,
is
sorry.
8th Avenue.
That's 8th Avenue right there, yeah.
Trying to figure out where I'm standing at this picture.
No, totally. It's a little bit.
No, you're in the sky. No, I know, but what is that, the structure of all the setbacks? What's the cross street there?
36th and 8th.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Thanks, Brian.
Right?
I think so. I think we should probably add some labels to this.
Be really helpful, yeah.
Yeah. So as you can see, a lot of the more bulky loft buildings in the middle portion of the image, as well as a lot of the towers around Penn Station, and the Midtown core to the north. So we think that the permitted FARs that we're proposing are in line with the extremely dense urban fabric of this
And
area.
are all those yellow buildings 18?
Excuse me?
Are all those yellow buildings at 18 FAR?
Those are all maxed out at 18.
Okay.
Next slide. This is an aerial view that depicts the northeast area, looking south from Bryant Park. This is what 18 FAR mixed residential buildings would look like in context there. The existing landscape in the northeast is a little bit more varied. We've got older loft buildings, some newer towers, which are mostly, budget hotels, from the past 15 years.
How does that answer your question? I understand what you're doing here to help us understand it.
Yeah.
Is there a lot coverage requirement that helps you get, that doesn't create this tall, slender 80-story buildings?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
Yeah. Next slide. And so we're going to shift from helicopter view to more sort of on the ground pedestrian view to sort of make you understand how these buildings are experienced from the pedestrian's perspective. Here we're on West 38th Street in the northeast looking westward. So new buildings that might result are outlined in sort of like the thicker black line, like the reddish rose colored building right in the middle of the image. The street wall requirements make these new buildings, we think, feel sort of part of the existing loft context, accommodating that higher density housing, but also respecting the character of the street. And so we're going to use this particular view to go through the special district-wide building envelope regulations. Next slide. So as I just noted on a previous slide, the building envelope rules apply here in the M19A R12, but they also apply to the two other zoning districts that we're proposing sort of uniformly. So it's important to sort of talk about them individually and what they achieve. Sorry, next slide. So on this, sorry, I'm a little mixed up. Okay. we're requiring a strong street wall, but there's also flexibility built into that. We'd have a minimum base height of 60 feet, which you see, you know, a lot through these 4 quadrants, with a maximum base height of 155 feet. But beyond that, we're also allowing buildings to match a neighboring building if that neighboring building has a street wall higher than 155 feet. That's not a common condition in the study area, but we want to allow that to happen. That's something that we allow to happen in all historic districts currently in the zoning, but we wanted to expand that outside of historic districts as well.
That's what that area is referencing, is the flexibility.
The flexibility
Okay.
to,
It would be much more though.
next slide. In terms of the street wall regulations, 100% of the ground floor would need to be at or within 8 feet of the street line. This encourages active street frontages, which create.
Step back from 8 feet from the street line.
It has to be either at the street line or within 8 feet of the street line.
So yeah, setback 8 feet.
But it doesn't have to be set back. It can be.
Right, I'm just gonna say to you upfront, as you said, the developers came in here last month. I know, just like the idea of doing setbacks here.
Points, let's come back to these points.
Wow.
Let him finish, because I have a long list too.
Good,
Let's let him
I'm
finish.
hearing it for the first
Yeah,
time, so I'm like,
we're all.
We'll get started.
Yep, make note.
I have a note.
Keep going,
Next slide.
otherwise you're never gonna get through it.
Above the first floor, 70% of the base would need to be at or within 8 feet of the street line. Again, this allows for architectural expression, facade articulation, and flexibility consistent with what we see throughout the district. Next slide. So in our second pairing, which is M18A-R12, we would propose to map that across the entirety of the southeast area, as well as one block of the southwest area. This pairing provides a non-residential FAR of 12 and a residential FAR of 18 with MIH. And so we're proposing to map these districts in areas that have a little bit more of a residential character, so to put our thumb on the scales a little bit for residential. It's worth noting that portions of the southeast area that overlap with the historic district. So pursuant to state law, the maximum residential FAR in historic districts is 12. Just as an aside. And obviously, any development in historic districts is still subject to LPC review. The portion of the southwest area that we're mapping M18A-R12, that's currently zoned M16D. There already are sort of a little cluster of 12 FAR residential buildings there. So we think that additional residential density is appropriate for that specific block. Next slide. So transitioning to, what this zoning district looks like in practice. This is a view of the southeast area looking northwest from Madison Square Park. The M18A-R12 allows for very high density development, but maintains a consistent street wall with its surroundings. Next slide. So again, transitioning to the pedestrian perspective, here's a view of the southeast from Broadway looking roughly southeast. You can see two of the projected development sites rising just behind the landmarked Grand Hotel, which is more or less centered in the foreground. Take a second. Next slide. Okay. Lastly, zooming back out, we're proposing to map an M18A-R11 district in most of the southwest quadrant. It's shown in light blue. This pairing would allow 12 FAR for non-residential uses, 15 FAR for residential uses. This comparatively lower density reflects the fact that as you move more south and west towards Chelsea, residential densities tend to fall a little bit more. So this is just trying to create a little bit more of a transitional buffer. And next slide. This, again, aerial view of what that M1 8AR11 district in the southwest looks like. You can see that here it's adjacent to the comparatively medium scale fabric of Chelsea in the foreground. And then you can sort of see how it tapers up towards the sort of higher density area of Midtown to the north. The M1 8AR11 allows for the stepping down. We have buildings in the 200 to 300 foot range, whereas in the R12 pair districts, we're typically looking at buildings in the 300 to 450 foot range. Next slide. So again, going back to the street level, this is a pedestrian perspective on West 26, looking east from the intersection with 7th Avenue. The same building envelope rules apply here. Again, helping to maintain that strong, consistent street wall. We think this will help prevent those undesirable shallow setbacks that we see a lot in those budget hotels that have proliferated over the last 15 or 20 years or
This would
so.
allow the 8 foot setback.
Excuse me,
This would allow the 8 foot setback in region.
you mean the hotels?
No, we know what hotels are.
Yeah.
In the prior slide, you mentioned a possible 8 foot setback. This would allow it. This shows it at street line.
Yeah,
Right.
the bulk rules are consistent across all the
Correct.
proposed zoning districts.
Step back here.
Right, so this is not, my point is, this is not necessarily accurate.
Yeah, this isn't an illustration of the 8 foot setback. This is an illustration
Of the
of
street
the
wall.
Washington street wall.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, most
Which looks
developers
great.
choose to do
Right.
a street wall at the street line.
Yeah.
Well, again,
Go ahead.
let's not debate these points, please, because we're never gonna.
No,
get
no,
this
no, go right ahead.
organization.
Go right ahead.
Let's keep going.
Next slide.
That's just, sure.
Okay. So in terms of other regulations, we're proposing a floor area exemption for public school space if a new development elects to provide one on site of up to 150,000 square feet. We're also proposing to allow for a 20% floor area bonus for the provision of a covered pedestrian space. Covered pedestrian spaces are a type of POPs that are typically indoors that we see in other high density parts of Midtown. And CPS bonus has produced a lot of, really high quality spaces. The CPS bonus is a ULURP action. It's a school special permit. So if someone were to elect to do a CPS bonus, they would have to come back to you and the commission for approval. Like we said earlier, we want to encourage improvements to transit infrastructure in the area. So we're proposing to extend the existing transit bonus applicability, which today radiates 500 feet from transit stations. We want to extend that applicability to 1,500 feet from all mass transit stations. Today, most of the study area is already covered by that 500-foot radius, but we think it's appropriate to expand that so it covers the entirety of the study area.
Are those 3 bullets over and above the 18 FAR?
Yes.
They're over and above the 18 FAR.
Yes.
So then maybe you need to express this, that it could be with an FAR up to X. Because that's not truth in advertising right now.
What's the 20 FARs?
So for 18 FAR districts, a 20% bonus would be 21.6 FAR, and for a 15 FAR district, a 20% bonus would be 18.
Then spell that out.
That's what we walked before. I know, but the point of it is, we're having a presentation that is not accurately depicting what's happening.
We're gonna have the opportunity to go through
Right.
all of these.
And it doesn't help with public engagement.
This list is continuing to grow as we go through.
Yep.
I say this to the council members, it doesn't help us.
I'll also just note that these bonuses are contingent upon discretionary actions, so it's not an as of right FAR, but we can continue to talk about that.
Let's
All for proceeding to the end.
let's continue on can wait till you hit the end button so we can all start talking.
Okay, great. So we're at the end.
32 FAR, actually.
you can read what's on the rest of the slide, but again, we're proposing to remove the 10,000 square foot limit on retail, just with the knowledge that Midtown has historically been sort of a nexus of regional shopping, in order to, sort of allow for better site planning for large sites, especially ones that contain historic landmarks. We're proposing to reduce the distance between buildings on zoning lots that contain multiple buildings to 8 feet. For split lots, we're proposing to allow the free distribution of floor area between zoning districts if they contain a landmark building. During public engagement, we heard that flashing illuminated signs were a big issue, so we're proposing to prohibit those across the special district. We are instituting our new Tier B and Tier C street frontage regulations. Those come with a lot of rules built into them, but basically they promote active uses on the ground floor, restrict the width of residential lobbies, restrict where parking and loading could be located within so many feet of the lot line, et cetera. And then we're making some changes to the boundaries of Special Garment Center District, Hudson Yards, and Midtown, so that we can carve out sort of a cohesive special MXX district.
That's new, right, Andy?
Sorry,
That's bullet was new, but I caught that, the district boundaries, right?
new from when?
From the last representation.
I don't remember when we last
I think
presented
it
it,
is
but
because
we
it's just relevant to us. And correct me if I'm wrong, 35th to 40th, just to the west of 8th Avenue.
Goes in Hudson
that would
Yards,
be Hudson Yards.
correct.
Okay.
Does Garment Center go away?
Garment Center goes away
100%.
100%.
So it gets replaced, majority gets replaced with MSNX. And it's special district, but it's 4 locations. Is that
Right, right. There's a slide that depicts this.
No, I saw, so I'm just trying to make sure I got it right, because I was.
How far
Yeah,
along is
so-
this presentation?
So Joe, if you know sub-area A1 of the garment district, that becomes MSX. Sub-district A2
then our district
becomes
part of
Hudson
the
Yards.
Yeah.
And then there's a small half
Actually, it's hard to
block.
understand that. So.
There's a small half block on the north that's part of special Midtown. We're taking that out of special Midtown, pulling it into MSX. I'm done.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, I'm gonna start, there's like 2 things. One, we may not be done with all the part, so don't plan on getting up and leaving the room as soon as this discussion is finished. I've been texting, we'll have that follow-up conversation, but don't energize to move out of here when we're done with this. Second, Andy, can you, if there is any way of you to highlight the differences between where we started and where we are today, because we had asked for anti-demolition incentives to make sure that we don't. We asked for the better description of transit bonuses. We asked for dwelling unit mix. We asked for height limits, POPs restrictions, social service facilities, all the stuff that we have emailed you, sent you letters on, all that's in our written form. Did you take any of that and say, this changed, this did not change?
So can we go through these one by one?
Well, sure.
Okay, let's pick one.
I mean, so in the letter, we talked a lot about transit bonuses. We were not supportive of the idea of transit bonuses going across the entire district. Is that change from 500 to 1,500 an adjustment from the original thought on transit bonus, or is that still the same formula?
We're still proposing to expand the transit bonus to 1,500 feet. I think it's important to note, we don't have an image here where we can provide you one. The 500-foot existing buffer covers pretty much the majority of the study area today. It's really about half of the northeast and a small sliver of the southeast that are not covered by it, which we think is appropriate to cover with the transit bonus.
And the transit bonus won't apply to the areas outside of those 4 quadrants. So the 1,500 feet would extend out. So people building outside of MSMX are inside the 1,500 buffer now. So they could get a transit bonus in the cross shape between the quadrants, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I'm just gonna ask yes or no without.
Yeah, so it's the special Midtown district, which sort of crisscrosses, is considered a special, central business district in zoning and automatically gets that 1,500-foot buffer. So we just thought,
The Garment Center does not have a 1,500-foot transit component today. If I am moving,
I'm sorry, I said Midtown.
I know, that's why I'm trying to translate. But, so if I have a building on the west side of 8th Avenue in the West 30s, if I'm not proximate to not within 2 blocks of the 42nd Street subway stop or the 34th Street subway, I cannot take good advantage of the transit bonus. Because it's too far.
I think you're probably right. I think it's probably
Right,
outside.
so the point of it is, I'm trying to always try to pull us back.
Yeah.
That means that we would effectively have the ability to have mapped to 21.6 FAR on the west side of 8th Avenue in that mid-range that is not adjacent to those blocks. And these are the kinds of things that are nuances that actually matter to people. Because I think we're that's in favor of transit bonuses. Not even a question.
We asked for, making sure we create more family size units, 2 bedrooms or more. Is there any language in here to support dwelling unit configuration, composition, anything like that, that preserves family size units?
We're not proposing to put any sort of mandate on the type of unit mix that gets built.
So in terms of the council environment.
Yeah. We're as specifically about making sure that social service facilities are run by quality providers, maintain high standards.
So I just want to note that there are dwelling unit mix standards for MIH units. So this,
HPD controls that, so HPD.
I just say that as a city, it's not just about affordable units, it's about not having a dorm created on every site of all studios. We as a community believe a healthy city has a range of unit mixes, whether they're market rate or affordable. We should not just become the lowest income families, but families of all different.
We'd ask that if there are any increases due to bonuses, that is a higher percentage of affordability. So the MIH is 30, is that across the entirety, these bonuses that bring us up to 21 FAR. So the additional bonus FAR include a higher percentage of affordability units like we asked for.
my understanding is for a transit bonus, that additional FAR is not subject to MIH, but for a POPs bonus, it is.
Well, that was my next question, is did we eliminate the POPs bonus? Because we had said specifically in this neighborhood, POPs create a problem, and we didn't want the setbacks and additional height as a result of POPs, and that you have not eliminated.
So the POPs bonus exists today. We're not proposing to change the regulations in any way. Couple of things. So the existing POPs bonus is only bonusable on commercial floor area. So because we're expecting the vast majority of this to be residential development, we do not expect to see many, if any, POPs together with residential buildings.
Like the one we just discussed before you came to us.
So I just,
A nice discussion.
Yeah, I think
Like, this is like, there is a desire amongst residential. See, I mean, this is rooted in the general commentary for the board that, you know, when this process first started, the idea that things were overbuilt and they would not be demolition because they would be able to go above 12, and our desire to protect the fabric of this district and not have tall skyscrapers popping up as
while
pencils.
encouraging conversion.
And encourage conversion as opposed to demolition, the response from DCP was, these buildings are all overbuilt, that's unlikely to happen. In the subsequent time, City of Yes has passed and the 12 FAR cap has been removed. A trend amongst the development community, articles and cranes and Real Deal, that the development community is chomping at the bit. Because now they can build up to 21.6 FAR buildings on lots that were currently at 10, zoned for 10 to 12. So what, this is the crux of the problem here. All right, so that's where the root of my questions come from now.
Okay, so, you know, I think the decision on the developer's part of whether to redevelop a building, convert a building, or just keep it the same use and not do anything is based on a complicated set of interrelated variables. You know, I think it's never as simple as zoning allows X FAR, I'm built to under that, therefore I'm going to demolish my building. We actually did a look back analysis and analyzed development trends in 3 zoning districts that had been recently rezoned from N districts to allow for housing in the past couple of decades. And what we found in those look backs was that we didn't see any evidence of sort of large scale demolition. And B, we saw that both jobs and housing grew at the same time. So we didn't see any evidence that housing displaced jobs.
Those zones that you did the look back on, did they more than double the FAR?
No.
available to them, or was it within the same constraints of the existing FAR? So this is the argument you presented before when you said it's overbuilt, it's not gonna be knocked down, but you're now talking about potentially doubling FAR, which is a big incentive for a developer
So
to tear it down.
directly to that point, I know there's some concern that going from what's essentially a 10 FAR district now to an 18 FAR or a 15 FAR district, 21.6.
Thank you.
Represents, a huge incentive to demolition. Our analysis doesn't support that. We know that I'm gonna elaborate. We know intuitively that because development costs tend to scale linearly with the size of the development, and because demolition has really high fixed costs, we didn't expect there to be sort of this magical FAR tipping point beyond which it suddenly becomes cost effective or profitable to demolish and replace a building. But we wanted to test this theory, so we took a representative lot in the northwest quadrant that was built to about 9 FAR with an existing lot building on it. And we modeled what the return on investment would be to redevelop that site with a new residential building at a range of between 10 and 18 FAR. And what we found is that no matter what that new building was built at, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, the return on investment was essentially static. So that additional 5 or 8 or 10 FAR isn't actually, based on our close financial analysis, the incentive that it appears to be at face value.
I want to bring this to the attention, honestly.
I'm gonna open up for other.
Yeah, I just want to read this, I want to follow this one first. I am not talking about a clear study on certain zoning districts and a return on investment. I am talking about the rough and tumble way the real estate market actually works, with specific things like investment from China that doesn't care about the return, but is trying to park money here to do development. And we see 3 large sites in our district now, on 9th Avenue between 37th and 38th, and 2 on 36th, one way through to 37th Street. Those are sites that were not, they were garage type buildings, right? The amount of investment being put in there is well over the top. The site we have Target, for example, on 10th Avenue, 44 and 45, developed, and was overpaid for, built improperly, and it failed and it's being taken back by a bank. Because the investors that are looking at sites like this are not our New York developers. They are foreign developers who come in and throw money all over the place. And that, in your careful analysis, doesn't include that sector of the real estate community that just does all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I respect and understand that you have a long history in
I don't want you to respect me.
development.
I don't want you to respect me at all. I really don't, because the point of it is.
Okay, because I could do that.
No, I don't want you to, all right? Because what I'm trying to get at here is that we got into this and we support the garment center bid and look, every folks in West Midtown is the idea that the garment center itself, the manufacturing jobs you showed in that great slide have died and the tech jobs and the creative jobs are going up, right? That's a change. And by enlivening this district and creating residential, which would create both market rate and affordable, is the goal we share and we share today, right? It's been grafted onto this. The idea that city planning is subscribed to now, that density is the only answer to create housing, right? I know factually that housing in this kind of district is going to be created faster by conversion because those buildings exist. And those owners have a building, they have a 25% vacancy rate, and you give them a tool to do residential conversion, and we're gonna get both market rate and affordable units, because that's how all the, like, manufacturing districts have changed over the decades here, right? When you graft onto this, in some cases, a more than 50% increase in density, you create a whole different scenario. And there will be those owners who don't do the right, who just make choices that make no sense. We saw a 14-story loft building, 30 feet wide on West 39th Street, between 8th and 9th, demolished and replaced with a very skinny hotel, right? So some of these owners with a new FAR 15, right, will bring their Saudi Arabian money, whatever it is, to create hotels or to create some other kind of product there. The fact that you graft into this, you could set back 8 feet in these districts that have historically strong street walls. This is New York, and why people come to New York to be in these kind of districts and live in these kind of places. I'm really gonna ask you less and ask our council member more. Hello, council member. That there are certain things that we need in this proposal just to be, from the council member end, to be removed.
Can I just hear his response to what you're saying?
Sure.
Yeah, I think another thing, just to give you a break, I think we're not saying that there won't be development here. What we're saying is that we're going to see is a mix of types of developments. You know, now we're in the world where, you know, 67M is on the table. So that is an abatement for conversions. And similarly, we're hearing from a lot of different real estate folks that we like to talk to the bits to convert, making use of that, you know, thing. So there's a lot of potential here. So we're looking at more of possibilities of conversions where there's possible. We're also in all of the, you know, the slides that Andy went through showing the buildings that we're seeing projected sites. Those are what we're considering soft sites. Those are the sites that you know, that return on investment and all those things does make sense, and we're likely to see redevelop. But we're also expecting those buildings and those developments to be residential rather than commercial, just because commercial is allowed currently, and if those buildings have not maximized their FAR, they're not likely to do that until they have reason to do that. So having, you know, residential development and allowing residential here will promote more residential development. And to your point, just hotels, just, you know, that hotel special permit is in place. So nothing here takes that away in our proposal. So any hotel development is not an as-of-right development throughout the city, including MSMX.
Right, but if I now have an 18 or 21.6 FAR hotel, it's a different calculus.
Wait,
So that hotel special permit, you know, is because of work that we did in 2018. Joe and I, mostly Joe, set up Gal Brewer's rezoning the special garment district. You know, I've been at all the community engagements, and I've been on the phone with you guys. And the one thing that I did hear from the community was people stressing that they wanted to preserve this built environment, but we were all amenable to the idea of lifting the restrictions to allow for the conversion, welcoming new neighbors, new businesses, promise 24/7 life. But I do not believe, and can't go off of expectations, that the current proposal, the 18 FAR for residential, the 15 for commercial, will not incentivize developers to purchase and demolish these existing buildings. This already happened. Another site is on 6th Avenue and 37th Street.
Right.
We're getting a 66-story tower, which doesn't have the current FAR of 18. Just imagine if we did, it could be taller. So I'm really troubled.
And they demolished the 20-story building.
And yes, they did. And so what I think is I get that you're saying, like, we did an analysis and math, but that I don't, the slides that you showed of the buildings that had 22 FAR, those buildings were built as office buildings, and there's a great distance between window and center of the building.
They're dense.
They're dense, they're built
block
in this different way. As a developer, if you look at a site and you go, I'm gonna utilize 18 FAR on one of these really wide lots, and I'm gonna compress it, I'm gonna build a 33-story slender building. I can get more apartments in there. I can get better rents or sell better condos. And I think that everybody here is really supportive of this idea of releasing restrictions for residential, but I personally don't have the appetite for the increase in FAR density. I don't see a reason for that. The only reason being is we can potentially generate more housing, but at what cost? And I will tell you, as Jim pointed out, that if we want to convert a manufacturing loft building today, the timeline for that conversion, the physical existing building.
In the delivery of the housing.
In the delivery of the housing is far shorter than vacating the existing commercial tenants that are in that building. Then demolishing that building, then getting permits and building a new building. So what we're looking at as a community under that sort of spectrum is not 5 years to getting some new residential and new neighbors in the area. We're looking at, I don't know, 10 years longer. And aside from, the change to the physical environment, which I don't think the appetite is here for that, I think we're also looking at the quality of life over that time frame. And that's something we struggle with today. And that's something that we gotta kind of resolve today. So, yeah, that's a lot.
And I'm supporting more density too, honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm supporting more density. I think we can go 15 FAR at certain locations here. I think the problem from the current version of city planning 2.0 today, it's one size fits all. We need to look at this in a much more nuanced way, because that is going to get us something that happens sooner than later. I don't understand how someone could come and sit and talk to us so calmly and say, and we're going to also exempt 150,000 square feet for a school. That's a great idea. But think about it for a second. That's in a building that could be going from, it's currently 10 to 12 FAR, that can go from 15 to 18. Now we're going to push it up to 21.6, and we're going to exempt 150,000 square feet. That square feet goes somewhere. And the truth is, we've already proved, it goes to height. And we've proved this already in the area between West 30s. And we set that height at 250 feet, but we got buildings built at between 10 to 12 FAR. So set the height higher. Do something that actually manages it. Because if your goal is to get density and housing, you don't need the height. You're doing it because you're making a choice to do it to create flexibility. You're pushing street walls back, create flexibility. It feels extremely, very academic, as opposed to let's shape a city. So in fact, it respects that which is there and then builds a whole new idea. The meatpacking district has been entirely reimagined from what it was, right? It's just not something that is, it's as if the way to fix the city is to erase it. And I don't think that's what we do in our city. And I say to our council member again, the legacy here is these are districts that have strong identities. Garment Center, the Fur District, with all these different things that are all part of this. You want to preserve that, but allow growth and change.
I think certain people laugh at that. When you say we want to preserve this, we
And
character,
grow.
and people laugh, they're like.
But they didn't used to, this
I understand.
group was a non-laughing group.
I'm saying that's what's happening, like, they're like, character, we have a housing crisis, guys, what
So
does
therefore-
character to do with housing?
I mean,
And it's
if you're
very.
having crisis, the city should just.
Can I just respond
Please.
for a second? So, I mean, character is one of the three pillars
Yes.
of this plan, and we've been really explicit in saying that housing, economy, and public realm / character, where the urban design, rules come in. But I just want to be really clear that, we fought really hard to get this 12 FAR cap lifted in Albany, not just we in the administration, but elected officials did, community members did, and.
I fought against it.
Yeah,
Okay,
speak
I
for
guess,
yourself.
I respect it, I
And
respect that.
this is the only board that has. a
Only
position.
board.
We are the only board that has a position on that. No other
So-
board's taken a position that, so.
But what I'm,
Representative, who you're talking about.
I know
Thank you.
CB4 very well,
Thank you.
20+ years of working with you and respect this board's position very, very highly. And I know you're really extremely thoughtful about these matters. But again, we all fought, or not all of us, but many of us fought to lift the FAR cap in Albany with the understanding, we've been very consistent from the get-go on the Midtown South plan that were the cap to be lifted, this was an area where we thought it was
No, not really big.
appropriate to explore the higher densities. This is, from our perspective, one of the most transit-rich amenity-rich areas. It is why we think the density makes sense here, is borne out by the existing densities that are present in the area today. It is, you know, a significant increase over the existing zoning density that's allowed. But the built density in the area today, and this decision that property owners are gonna be making about whether to redevelop their buildings, is not based on what the zoning says today. It's what's on the property today. And if you've got an 18 FAR building, and there are a lot of sites, you know, within CB4 geography, on the west side of, you know, 8th Avenue, for
Yes.
example, or elsewhere, where buildings are built at 15 FAR, 18 FAR. That's not a slam dunk decision for a property owner to make, that you're going to take down an 18 FAR building to build an 18 FAR new residential building. You know, in some cases it might happen. In some
If you
cases,
can build an 80-story building, you
in some
will.
cases it might not.
The coefficient is clear. Every developer comes in this room presenting things to us. They want height
They want more.
because they get premium with height.
Yeah.
And that's factual.
I
We
also
deal with it
want
every
to add
month.
though that, you know, mapping MIH here is a powerful influence as well. Okay, you're not gonna get luxury condo pencil towers in an MIH district. It's not something that we see generally. We see buildings that are naturally moderated in height by the fact that they tend towards rental buildings that, you know, have MIH units. They're required to be distributed throughout the majority of the building's height. You know, it's a powerful influence on the height of buildings, and we don't see that kind of super tall development that comes in MIH districts. So
We had one last week.
I just want
last
to
month,
be,
Eric.
I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
this concept that, you know, in the root of your presentation, that, commercial space, were you present when David was here talking about how wonderful the high demand is for commercial space, and that's why they want to rezone the western rail yards?
Yeah,
Because
I was gonna
the demand for commercial is so strong and so high and
For
so
Class
important
A.
that they're gonna rezone an entire area.
And
So
last month we
the
had-
notion that commercial space is not a demand, but we, 2 months ago, had a developer in here say, commercial space is.
Large developers, they-
But so maybe.
So
let me-
1% at a time.
Let me cut through. So you're saying that, you know, because of the zoning FAR being higher, that we're not gonna see these pencil towers. So to Joe's question, like, what about including a height restriction across these MSMX?
And a liberal one.
And it doesn't have to be, you know, we can look and say 250, we can say 600, we can say
Whatever.
But some height restriction that forces that character of building, so it's bulkier and lower, and we don't end up with the super talls in the middle of the.
Unless there's a
the former
former
garment district. So is that something that, because a lot of these other things we've asked for, we have not received. So I'm gonna be blunt about that.
Yeah,
So is there some amenable position on height that you would say, this seems reasonable, given our deep analysis of other zoning areas where we've done these analysis, what is the analysis of height in those areas? And what could be a realistic number that we could say, if you have a 150,000 square foot school with a POPs and a setback from 8 feet and an 18 FAR up to 21.6 FAR, you know, Joe's point is it keeps stacking and stacking, we're gonna have 1,200 foot tall towers in the middle of the former government district.
Can I just talk about this 8-foot
Yeah.
recess allowance for a second, because I know it's causing a lot of concern tonight. That's a standard street wall allowance in what we consider to be strong street wall districts. That kind of 8-foot allowance is a common thing. It's part of underlying zoning that applies in other neighborhoods that we've rezoned recently, including Soho Novo, where, you know, loft character was, you know, also top of mind, that kind of allowance in the other day. It's to allow architectural flexibility in buildings, and it's pretty standard. We think it leads to good outcomes.
We agree with that part, but when you add the 8 feet to the POPs, to the community facility space in the school and the transit bonus and the, right?
It's the menu,
It's when somebody comes along and takes advantage of all of those factors.
and they will.
We're gonna have 1,200.
We hope they will. We hope they will.
Well,
We're gonna end up with.
We're saying, we're gonna have.
Well, good, and then you can come and sit here and you deal with the POPs issues over and over for the
I
various
understand
things.
that,
But
but
we're gonna end up with
improvements.
we're
Absolutely.
gonna end up with World Trade Center type buildings in the middle of the garment center district. And that is,
We do not think that is
well,
remotely a possibility.
It's like, you cannot think.
I'm sorry, but I just created.
Your crystal ball is, crystal ball, you cannot vouch for it, and I know you're being reasonable, but if we were able to get this degree of bulk west of 8th Avenue, right? Think, about what is the height limit that works. It also does something else. It pushes you into the rental kind of building format as opposed to the tall condo building kind of format. Because people will build condo buildings. They will do it. They will figure it out. And they will take a building next door and put MIH over there. They'll figure out a way to do this because everything has a little slip hole to go through.
So let me go back to my question. Is there a number that you think would be a reasonable calculus to say, at least we'll put in a height cap in this stuff?
So today, except for the M16D district, there are no height caps
I understand.
elsewhere.
Correct.
Because we're not proposing a height cap as part of the proposal that was referred, there's no scope to put in a height cap.
There is a scope to this. You can always put a height cap in.
No.
You're telling me that it's out of scope
It's out
to
of
put a
scope.
height cap in. Well, then I think, thank you so much for coming this evening. Because why are we having any discussion whatsoever when this was raised months and months ago?
I think, and sort of maybe unexamined part of assumption of this line of questioning is, the assumption that tall buildings are per se bad, and I just want to put the question
We don't
back
say
to
that.
the board.
We don't
Why
say
are
that.
tall buildings?
Hey, we have a district that has some of the
Oh, I
highest,
can
tallest
answer
buildings
that
in the city of New York.
Okay.
No.
I mean,
No,
come
no,
on,
no,
let's say that it's
Andy, but Andy, you know that we don't have that.
We don't say that.
It's the.
But that is the assumption of this line of questioning.
No, it isn't.
I'm not saying something the board has said and considered.
It's cataclysmic from one of the
particular line of
tallest buildings in
questioning.
the city of New York, okay, at the Tishman Spire building. I do not think certain locations, height makes a great deal of sense in. I subscribe to it and I support it.
Yeah.
I am now talking about districts that don't have 60-story, 80-story buildings. That's what I'm talking about. And it is not about density, and you and I actually agree more on density than you may think sometimes.
I agree,
actually
we
do.
agree on density.
We really do, right? It's managing the density, right? I don't get at all this philosophy that to manage density is a terrible thing at all. Because you have a built environment that you want to have some respect for. I have respect for this city. And I have respect for the different districts and how they look and feel. I'm just asking that we think about that, because in the end, this will be a mishmash.
I also think you're.
Hold on.
Wait, hold on.
No, Brian, Kevin, we have other people.
Can I just quickly respond, though?
They haven't been called on, and they're raising their call on.
Just-
Respond.
I just want to step back a bit because we're talking about height, but I think we're also talking about character here. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the right thing because we're very conscious about respecting that character. And when we feel that how the building meets the street is where that character is defined, and how the people experience the building on the street is what, like, after a certain degree, that
So I'm
height
sorry,
kind of goes
I'm
away.
gonna cut you off. You're wrong, all right? I think I'm the only person at this table who actually lives on one of the blocks that's gonna be directly impacted by this. And I can tell you that the 7-story building and the 4-story building contribute considerably to our street amidst the 12 and the 22-story buildings. They let in light and they give us sky, and that is one of the few assets that we have here on the west side is that sky. And so just to build walls of buildings to either side of us kind of reminds me of where the financial district was and how we came up with zoning laws to begin with. And I like skyscrapers, but I also love our built environment. And this plan with the FAR as it is, does not incentivize the maintaining of our environment in these conversions, which was the initial intention that was pitched at us. And so I know that the state has lifted the cap and you applaud that. I don't, all right? And I really think that we're sitting here going, this area is transit rich, and so this is an area that deserves density. So our area is transit rich. It is a 1-seat commute. It is rich for commercial development, which at 15 FAR might not be as desirable as at 18, but I don't see why, if I was a developer, I wouldn't demolish these buildings and build commercial towers with 15-story.
Some will.
I mean, someone will. And so I think to say that I don't think this will happen, it's like if you don't think this will happen, and that's not something you want to happen, let's design this with guardrails, so it doesn't happen. Let's design this with guardrails that inspires conversions, the adaptive reuse that we all sort of were promised at the start of this, because right now, I think we're gonna head down a road that we're not gonna be able to reset. And Sanford, I know.
I don't say you know, please don't do that, okay, Kevin?
I have some questions, but I think there's a line of thought going here, so I'll come back to me if you could.
I just want to reply, I think, and there are numbers, I looked in the appendix H to the draft scope of work. That if we focus on only office conversions and we give up the development of soft sites. That will reduce significantly the total amount of housing units, including affordable units that we can get out of this, and in comments.
We should not
Response
give up
1.1
development of
appendix
soft
H, the estimate is there's 781 units will be created out of existing conversions. And 8,895 will be created from development of soft sites. I think that the office conversion rate is probably higher now because the office market has weakened since some of the investments were created. But we are leaving a huge amount of potential housing on the table.
Don't leave it off the table. No, we should have soft sites developed. We should support those 4 and 5-story buildings without question be redeveloped. It's the management of the development.
No, Joe, I'm not disagreeing with your comments about height limit or street wall.
Right.
I'm disagreeing with Brian.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
I just want to say one thing though. Sanford, when I was in the initial conversations and you first approached us, you said, we're hoping to generate approximately 3,000 units across these 4 districts. All right. When the cap was lifted on FAR, you came back and said, we're hoping to generate 9,000 units. I don't really think, and I don't think that is the responsibility of our one district to generate all of this housing. When City of Yes came around, we talked about how citywide, every district has to contribute to the share. Well, our district has consistently contributed, I think, as Paul mentioned early on. And so we're not going to solve all of New York's housing issues in this one district. And so I know that 9,000, not getting 9,000 units sounds like we're losing a lot, but original proposal was for around generating 3,000 units.
I want the extra 6,000 units.
I know you do.
But I
They don't have to be.
That's fine, but like how we get there, Leslie,
No, it's okay.
Rachel, do you have anything you wanna?
No, I wanna continue,
The debate between Sanford, Brian and Joe.
I just bring one thing to your attention too, and that is, in this discussion, not at all discussed are mechanical floors, voids, or cantilever. One of the big issues here is any owner will say, ha, I can dump in a bunch of mechanical floors, I can dump in a bunch of this in order to get more height. How can we control and manage that?
So,
Yes, some tools in it.
the residential mechanical voids text that was passed a few years ago would apply to residential buildings.
How about commercial?
For commercial, there is more flexibility. So if you have a mixed use building.
That's the next microphone, the mixed use.
Yeah, so the mixed use building, the commercial use would have that flexibility for mechanical space, and then the residential uses, the residential floors would be limited based on that.
So we could have a 60-foot void in a mixed use building that has residential on top, and we get another, I guess the whole thing here is, we bring the height to you and we'll figure it out. Hopefully, with our council member who's so interested now in trying to figure out a way to make things work. Because City of Yes was just a, half blank check for us. We need to work with our council member.
The problem, they have a one-track thing.
They're on track.
They're on one track. This is not.
Density solves the problem. Density solves the
Exactly,
problem.
they don't want
Yes,
problem
they're
solving.
17-year-olds, they're gonna be 34 and they're gonna go, what the hell am I bothering?
Hopefully they'll be able to afford it to live in
Yeah.
New York City because we built housing.
No, that's not.
No.
Please.
No, trust me, they're
That's
Yes,
not
let's
like-
please not, okay, please
Yeah,
not.
I mean.
No.
All right, here's listen, here's the.
That is the foundation of our perspective here, though, is that we do have.
Build housing at all costs.
Build housing at all costs.
Housing at all costs, we understand that's your perspective.
And I'm a housing advocate saying, you're out of your mind
Your
after a while.
perspective is build housing at all costs.
Yeah.
We are pro-housing, we're in favor of higher density.
This is not,
Leslie,
this is not
please.
at all costs. This is a, like, there is a version of the world
Where can I finish and I will call on you, I promise, okay? I'm
Okay.
just trying to say that we have tried to be thoughtful and unique to each of our demands of our neighborhoods and our blocks. And we do promote housing, we build housing, we have high density, we have a lot of height. Those aren't the issues for us, and you know that. So we're saying this style of building does not fit in with a planning process.
Correct.
And you are the Department of Planning, and instead you're just doing zoning.
Yeah.
And we are asking that we find solutions to plan appropriately to build vibrant neighborhoods, which is part of what you're saying is what you want. And we're not saying, oh, I'm gonna look at my kid in 20 years and say, because I built 9,000 units, you can afford to live here. That doesn't link necessarily, okay? So I just want us to think of solutions to how do we get more housing? And how do we address the concerns that Brian raised of when we started this process? It was about conversion and adaptive reuse of existing structures. And now we're at a position where we feel, I do and many others, not all, that could bulldoze Government Center District and build 21 FAR skyscrapers.
And if you have
So
something
there's
like-
a balance I want to strike and I want to
Good. And
find.
if you have
So
something like a-
let me go to Sanford because I told Sanford I was calling it, so.
okay, I wanna first comment, I think. This is not a like housing at all costs approach. There's you could rebuild New York's like Tokyo, no one's proposing that. This is to build, to build higher density in 42 blocks that are extremely transit rich and have an existing highly built up environment. In addition, there's many rules to preserve the existing like look and feel of the street, focused on the street wall. These rules may not be perfect, we may have tweaks. But I think what we should be really careful about is when we propose amendments to this kind of plan. Like, those amendments can really meaningfully reduce the actual housing production that occurs. So some amendments could be very small and still be super important for preserving the built environment. I think the 8-foot setback, for example, we could make a strong case that wouldn't affect housing production at all, and we should change it. But I think CWS illustrated this, not our district at all. None of really our proposals were taken, but many parts of the city, mostly in the outer boroughs, asked for changes, and as a result of them, it went from producing 110,000 units to producing about 80,000. That's kind of frustrating to me, and I don't want to see something similar here where we make changes that I think understandable the perspective behind them, but they lead to a significant loss of the actual production of housing.
None of those first three bullets produce a single, none of those first three bullets produce a single unit of housing. They produce more density for different purposes. And the issue here is, if you're focused like I am too on the housing production.
Wait, I think the transit bonus does. I think you were saying about the first two.
No, the transit bonus gets you more, but you repair a subway station, you get more FAR.
Yeah, but for
residential. You're capped at 18. You're at 18.
No more.
It doesn't get more. The differential between the 18 and the 21.6 is your gift for having produced, not your gift, your transaction for having produced the improvements to the transit station.
My biggest concern is not with non-residential FAR.
I know it is, and that's what I'm trying to say, that I think it's all about the confluence of all these together. If we can figure out ways to look at this to get to that production portion and to manage.
But I wanna say it is important that when there's a 5-story loft building, someone built it into a 20-story apartment building, that is a win in my mind.
Okay.
But this is where, your position is respected and his position is respected, right? And so he's at 3,000 units, you're at 8,000 units. How do we navigate through?
Yeah, see, that's
so that we get a balance?
And we actually have a real discussion as opposed to.
See, they don't want that, they're up to the.
Leslie, please don't say
Sorry,
they.
sorry, sir.
Okay.
DC.
They can they can speak for themselves.
They did.
So you're interpreting. So let's see if we can find some solutions here.
And I think Brian actually sort of illustrated my point in a way that I don't think he maybe wanted to by citing the demolition of that building that you cited.
I don't know.
But-
The building on 37th thing.
Right, which was, you know, our analysis based on a year and a half plus of careful consideration showed that if a site is profitable to demolish and rebuild at 18 FAR, it's also profitable to demolish and rebuild at 12 FAR. So the idea of artificially suppressing FAR in the hopes that that would not be an incentive to demolish.
That doesn't work as an argument. It
I'm
doesn't.
just telling you how numbers work.
I'm telling you how developers work,
Right, so
and they get more square footage.
Let me ask one of my questions that I actually have when I was supposed to moderate the conversation. One of the other things we had talked about earlier on in the process is the combination of lots to increase. So you have a soft lot next to a lot, and now you start to combine lots. And then you have, then now really I started to worry about the community facility space, the setbacks, the pops and all that, because now,
Like the Nicole.
you have a lot of combination of issues. And so can we find a way to address that situation?
I just want to say, like, our DEIS does look at lots that are kind of soft lots next to each other and like marks them as like more likely to merge, and that is identified in our projections. So projected sites where things have, the softer sites next to each other, they're merged, and they show what the 18 or the 15 FR would look like on that site with a merged lot. So it's pretty accurate in terms of, like, not trying to hide anything here. We're saying this is the type of development that's gonna happen here. But then I also just want to say, like, in terms of the 3,000, 8,000 kind of things, the units and all that, you can disagree with our position, but we've been pretty consistent, even when we're saying 3,000, that we are mapping or considering 12 FAR, but we're hoping that cap is lifted. That has been our position from the start of MSM.
We extracted that from you. I did it myself. I asked those questions and I got someone to answer. It was not presented that way whatsoever. You may have thought that or internally, but until we asked that question.
Absolutely
It
presented.
was presented. You can watch it on YouTube.
All right, okay.
So we've been clear.
So
It was
here's the thing that as part of our 12 FAR working group, one of the requests we made, which did not get through, was to request a special permit so that we would be able to review building by building what's going on, so that we can have input as to neighborhood character, style of buildings, architectural designs on these higher density buildings. So it's not saying we're saying no to the high density buildings, but we as a community would have some input as to how that goes. So the special permit process was rejected, but we'd still maybe like to revisit something like that. I'm trying to find ways. So I mentioned height as maybe a solution. I mentioned special permits. Like, is there something that we as a community can insert into this process? Because a lot of the things we're asking for aren't being addressed. Is there something else that we haven't asked for that we can ask for that would be within scope, can be done, so that we can have a say in this, the vibrancy of these neighborhood characters while building 8,000 housing units?
I think what we're trying to investigate is, what are you attempting to fix? Because as Eric mentioned, there's, because of MIH, because of the state tax incentive, there's a natural tipping of the scales towards a rental product that's naturally more modest. And also the fact that pencil tower billionaires row style buildings only ever pencil out if they're 100% market rate luxury development. Otherwise, an MIH building just doesn't make sense. So I'm just like, what's the underlying problem that you're trying to address with a fix?
Well, I think that, and others can speak on that question as well, but for me, it's the street wall environment and the current built environment. So the notion of the garment center district has sort of a cachet in and of itself that we should preserve. The affordability factor, so that it's not, so we have talked about maybe increasing the MIH formulas above a certain FAR, so we guarantee more affordability at the higher densities. Those are things that we've asked for. So those are things that we want to try to work to protect, is neighborhood character and guarantees of affordability in the long term. So that,
And trying to not layer bonus after bonus. I think there should be bonuses, there should be options, but you don't get to have everything from the menu.
You can't get everything from the menu. You can combine bonuses, but you can't layer them on top of one another. So you can't get 20% on top of 20% on top of 20%. The maximum you could get if you either individually or in combination is 20%.
Yeah, and I just wanna,
I'm talking, can't you get a mid-block 21.6 in these proposed districts?
yeah, so again, okay, so we're
I'm not
hearing
theoretically, you can.
a couple of things. So just wanna first,
Yeah, I
okay, so we're talking about neighborhood character, right? We believe our street wall rights are responsive to that concern of neighborhood character. If you don't agree with that, you have tweaks to that, more than happy to hear your suggestions on that. For example, the 8 foot, whatever that is. That's.
elimination of pops.
Yes,
That's one of the
that's-
things we'd asked for.
Yes.
So, okay, so on props, again, that's an existing regulation, it's not something that we're proposing here, and it's not something we're adding
You
to
can eliminate
residential.
it, as applicability in these special zoning districts, things that are like that all the time.
Yeah, so I mean, again, suggestions, and if you want to write that in your resolution
Yeah.
or whatever that is, happy to hear your comments on that, I just wanted to see.
We're gonna work with a council member because we don't believe that there's any willingness, honestly, in the current Department of City Planning for proposal
Okay,
to make changes.
just want to, again, and a couple of other things, want to respond to. You know, we keep talking about like all of these other things on the menu. I just want to be clear that the as of right proposal here is the 15 FAR or the 18 FAR. That is what you can get. And with the street wall regs done and with MIH that leads to certain type of building. Yes, you can do all these other things, but to go back to your point of like having some sort of discretion, that is where that discretion comes in. If you're trying to go beyond the 15, beyond the 18, if you're trying to do a bonus, that is where it is going to be very site specific, and that is a proposal that is going to come before the community board for their feedback. And it's gonna go through on a full, non-regular process, depending on whether it's an authorization or a special permit. So there is that built in, if you're trying to go beyond the 15-18.
Right, and I appreciate that, but right now we're at 10 to 12, we're bumping up to 15, 18, and then we get
That's a
above
30%
the 15, above the 50. So please understand that, we were amenable to this from the outset because there was conversion and adaptive reuse. And now it's 15, 18 before we become involved again. And so that's, I think, some of the underlying tension. So Leslie has her hand up.
I just want a motion to stop this conversation.
I won't recognize that motion. I'm sorry.
Because this is, now we're taking
have-
philosophies, if we're
But
gonna,
this-
wait, hold on, no, let me, no, you just called on me. If we're gonna talk about what we wanna see and what we wanna put in a letter or stipulate, then let's do that amongst ourselves. I don't wanna go back and forth with them on what's right, what's wrong,
That's right.
this is not fruitful
Well,
and it's not.
Leslie, point of order is, the question I asked was, what could we put in to help lead that conversation so we can write our letter? Okay, that's what this conversation is could we include special permits? Could we include height? Could we include the elimination of pops? These are
We
questions.
can do
that-
whatever we want in our letter.
But you're right, we could ask them to paint everything blue as well.
Whether it's
You know what
or
I
not,
mean.
we can also have a call of action.
Right, we need to write a letter that has actionable steps here. And so what,
And I'm just, when the board is considering what to say to us about height, just one other point that I would want to make, before we stop talking here is, if the board is going to be thinking about height limits, for example, and pushing heights down, I think we've communicated tonight that, we have confidence that the buildings that you're gonna see as a result of the rezoning generally are coming out in between the 20 and 50-story range. And, if buildings begin to be pushed down, it does change the calculus of any individual property owner and makes things like demolitions actually more likely if you are suppressing height in a way that you no longer have height flexibility to be able to accommodate height on your own site. We see this all over Manhattan, where you have a lower scale building next to a development site. The lower scale building can transfer its excess development rights to an adjacent site, preserves the lower scale building, allows the flexibility in height, allows a taller building on that site. It's not something that is necessarily going to, conditions going to exist on every single site in Midtown South, but it's an important factor that we think is actually quite important in allowing height flexibility. It is a preservation tool for existing buildings. if on a soft site, an underbuilt site, a vacant site, you can accommodate that excess floor area. It can lead to preservation of buildings and disincentivize some demolitions. So just wanted to put that out.
Andy, you
Oh, I just want to say, to your earlier point about, the potential for a special permit for FAR vote. Well, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that the MIH program is perfect. It's not. But, I think making a big change to the way MIH works is a much bigger, much more complex citywide policy conversation that, unfortunately, there's no scope for in this particular application.
all right. So we've heard a letter.
I think we have pounds up over there too.
What?
We have pounds up on. Do we? We did. Well, Chris
is, okay, Chris, go ahead.
Thank you so much for bringing this meeting on. I appreciate that Joe said that, Department of City Planning was coming from an academic perspective. I kind of disagree. It's almost like an affront to the academic conversation that's being happened and debate that's happening right now in this room. But my big concern is, when I worked in advertising and a brand would give me the responsibility of making an ad that represented their principles, their values, their tradition, their history, there are guardrails. And it's been echoed throughout this meeting that guardrails are needed, not for suppression of height, but to ensure that things are being done in a practical way, to ensure that we meet at least the median of new housing developed in this area. It's a little disconcerting that the city, the executive branch, has come to our board with a totalitarian approach and a winner-take-all approach to what they deem is acceptable versus working in government and actually having a spirited debate that has solutions to real problems that are being presented by the citizens of our community board. And it's necessary to write a letter. And I echo Leslie's sentiment in frustration about how the tenor of the conversation has gone this far. But I am for a letter and would love to hear the bullet points on there.
Thanks, Chris. Roberta?
Hold on. Hi, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So I've just been tuning into the discussion, and I want to, it sounds like there really does need to be some solution-oriented thinking surrounding the, character and height specific issues. One place that I did want to at least put forward an idea is focusing on like both the, the street level feel and the setbacks that I think the proposal does, but then the ability to preserve view corridors of landmarks, within this area, particularly of the Empire State Building, which I know has been I think a problem looking north on Broadway. And that will like help with ensuring that individuals are able to see sufficient sky and maybe another moderating factor. I don't know if the department could speak specifically to that. I would, while I'm on here, want to reiterate that I do believe it is important to we don't have an infinite number of opportunities to undertake something of this nature where you have a very, very low, like number of residents and you have a very high level of amenity access and transit access. We have the ability to create a lot of affordable units. So I understand where the, certain members of the committee are coming from with the concerns relating to height and bulk. I would emphasize that this, just thinking globally, we do have an opportunity to really help influence the residential character of the neighborhood. I think we've all had problems over the past couple of years where particularly the Garment District area, but the sort of east of 8th Avenue has become sort of emptied out at night, and the mixture of that, as well as individuals who are either loitering or who are apparently unwell on the street, that character of not having a residential community at night, in fact, is it makes it really inhospitable to walk around, and keeps me personally further west, which I think this is a problem that a lot of us have experienced, and I did want to note how helpful this will be, I think, in contributing to improving that particular street level issue. And I really do hope that the committee ultimately does try to get to some sort of compromise on this issue.
Thanks, Robert. Anybody else online that wants to speak, please raise your hand, otherwise I'm gonna continue on the room.
Thank you for your presentation. Just some thoughts, especially from digesting this discussion. As an individual, I'm pro housing, adding more housing, but as a people society, it's not either this or that. There's nothing in between. So we can talk to each other. Now, there needs to be more and more housing, so I want to be clear on that. So, but I think Paul was asking, one of the members of the community were asking what input CB4 or this community could have. And I read through the materials in the Dropbox. It was an April 22nd letter from 2024 that CB4 sent. I mean, can you tell me, was there any input from Community Board 4 that was taken into account? For anything?
I mean, CB4 reiterated the need to create a strong street wall. I think we reinforced our regulations that we're proposing since then. That's one element.
So, but maybe I misheard tonight, but I still hear there's an 8-foot setback in the street wall. If people.
Sorry, there's the possibility of setting back 8 feet. What we've seen in practice is that 8 feet is the flexibility that architects need to create expression, have the facade move in and out a little bit, create entryways that are of sufficient depth. We try to avoid mandating 100% of the street wall at the street line because we found in practice in the past that it leads to inflexible regulations and architects end up coming to us for waivers to create things like, allow for windows and doorways.
I got you. I'll just highly recommend, as I think someone else mentioned, we try to work together to find common ground. Because this housing is desperately needed to address the housing issues in New York City. Again, maybe I misunderstood, but if is it concerned that these buildings can be hypothetical or otherwise be torn down and then hotels can be built up?
It's a special permit with the hotel.
This could be hotel.
Yeah.
It could be.
Well, could we not, whatever the correct terminology is, zone it? So that these can only be used for residential or housing purposes and not for hotel purposes.
So in order to put in a hotel, that requires a special permit citywide. So it's another level of discretionary review. So someone just can't come in and put in a hotel as of right.
But because I was listening to your discussion, maybe I misunderstood.
Yes. You have to have the special permit, right? But if I now have an ability to get to a much higher FAR for a bunch of these layered bonuses, I could choose to build a much taller, denser hotel, and I'll pay for that special permit process because I know I'm gonna get a huge return.
So
This is gonna be a challenge with any time we allow greater residential density. We are always implicitly allowing, in theory, greater hotel density.
No, this is a mixed use district, only here. Because the districts are either or normally. This is a mixed use allowing, it's because it's a.
hotel counts as commercial for it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, commercial. So in a residential district, like we talked about mapping that on 11th Avenue in Sanford, that would just be residential we were looking for there, not for commercial. That's the difference. This allows a full.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, that's a fair point.
Like
You see what I mean? Like anything we do here, assuming we're leaving it as mixed use, which I think is not in question, like.
What?
Anything we do here in this area, assuming we're leaving it as mixed use, which I think is not in question. But
Right.
Mixed use district.
And then
anything we do that will increase residential will also increase the desirability of a hotel. So I think it is inevitable if we desire to increase residential, with that is a, you know,
Right, no,
just in a
saying-
way to get
No, of course not,
moved
but
towards increasing the
Kevin's point, but
residential
as in-
without also
in this
increasing the possibility of a
underlying-
hotel.
In this underlying context of a mixed use district, you get increased FAR, which means you get either or a mix. Correct, so there's no way to say you can't get it.
But again, any hotel has to go through full discretionary process that comes to the board,
Right.
goes to city planning,
Yes,
city,
yes,
goes to
yes.
city council. Has a set of findings that are attached to it, can be approved or can be
But in the
denied.
bottom line, it's a budget line in someone's development budget. If they're getting a thing, if they're getting a very large.
Another, just want to clarify, the 18 FAR is the residential use, the commercial FAR is 15 max.
For the sake of time,
But it's
12
10.
in the-
For the sake of time, I'll conclude by saying, housing needs to get done. But you should take into account when work with the community and with the community board. And I found some of this discussion here as being across each other. The folks here are volunteers for the community. With all due respect, you're employees in the city of New York, so just you should listen to the community input and where there can be a meeting of common ground, let's do the hard work and find a common ground as opposed to talking past each other.
So what I'm hearing so far is we've read a letter and some of the points that I would think we need to include. Would be to include design factors for light and air and views. Want to strengthen street walls. We want to revisit the elimination of POPs. We want to increase the percentage of permanently affordable the MIH formula over 12 FAR residential. We'd like to revisit special permits for consideration of building the residential over 12 FAR, so we have input. We want to review the transit bonus, because now we had requested 500 to 1,500, so review the transit bonus issues. We want to have tighter restrictions on the layering of the bonuses. You said it can't occur, but we want to strengthen that a little bit more. So like if you have the school, you can't get the transit bonus and the POPs and, so we kind of build some fabric in that way. We want to look at the restriction of mechanical boards to apply to commercial as well as residential and some consideration of some height issues. So
I think we also need, I think we need to consult with community board 5 about any height restrictions. Because a big chunk of this district is in their board, so we should have a common ground as to what makes sense for both boards together.
And I think to tie everything together, maybe to reiterate what Kevin was saying, that we are a CB committed to affordable housing.
Right, and the community board committed to increase density.
I just have a question, because in the presentation, we looked at the area that the text amendment and rezoning applied to as ending 100 feet west of 8th Avenue. But the area to the west of that, which goes all the way to 9th, is
To 100 feet west of, east of 9th.
east of 9th, yes. That is currently zoned as commercial, and it's gonna have the same.
Oh,
How do we, just because the
what does
presentation.
does the underlying zoning stay the same, Andy?
So, sorry.
In those blocks from 3.5 to 4 to 3.9.
It's
Six, six, four.
Six, four.
That the underlying zoning
Will
stays the same. The only thing that we're changing is prohibition on conversions in buildings.
And we're also
over
moving the
70.
district line, the special district line.
It's becoming
Or Hudson
a
Yards.
Hudson Yards subdistrict.
And my further question to that is.
And the height limit stays the same there.
It's, the bulk controls stay the same, they're not going away.
What the 250 height limit that we put, we meant to before, just confirm.
So the height limit stays the same, does the FIR change to 1850?
No.
So here's something,
Only portion, that's what was.
here's something interesting, because this is something that we're dealing with the developer in another committee. And they have sworn to us that with the changes that are happening, they're able to bonus up higher than the 12 FAR. This is that, that problem building the 35th Street Hotel issue where illegal demolition and all that.
Yeah.
Right, they have just come to us, I should know this too, just last week, they made a whole presentation to the Housing and Human Services Committee. To rectify it by building a certain number of apartments and, square footage. And they were gonna buy, they're built at max today. They were gonna buy from the adjacent property from Zelda. They came back and said, no, now they're going to use the new City of Yes and zoning proposed to create additional bulk. And I said to them, I don't think you can do that and go above the 12 FAR. That's a kind of example, but. I want to reach out to you about that, because it just happened last week.
So that comes to set, let's,
What do you mean, but they can't, you're just saying.
We're not changing the underlying zoning, FARs.
it
Okay.
just eliminate the ability to convert is it.
Right.
It was mentioned briefly, but what about the open spaces? Where, how does that like,
So
yeah, where are they?
There aren't any.
the reason,
That's what
the
I
reason we want to expand the availability of the covered pedestrian space bonus is because, as you mentioned correctly, this neighborhood does have a dearth of publicly accessible open space, either publicly owned through parks or privately owned. So, and because we don't have a lot of publicly owned land here to build either 100% affordable housing or new community facilities or open space, we have to do what we can with the tools we have, and that means leveraging the private market to try and get those things where we can.
Yes, so and to answer that question, Liz, I think we had this conversation about POPs, right? Like the concept, that Dan's pointed out is that without POPs, you're not gonna get additional open space. Because there isn't any really here, and so to get it would mean POPs. POPs then create another
covered
set
open
of
space.
problems, but covered open space.
It's all covered, it's not gonna be
Yeah,
covered,
why cover it?
because that's all they're gonna do.
But that's,
Makes no sense.
it's not open
But
space.
Well, notice that maintains, you can maintain a street wall, essentially do like a multi-story atrium, you know.
But the POPs create other complications.
Right, no,
And so, like,
I'm getting confused what the motivation was for
It's
covered, because in terms of cost to a developer, the main cost either way is just the loss of space that could be used for something else.
It's
The
their,
cost of the actual.
it's their, yeah,
of having
they
the
want to
surface
have
is
something
minor
to say that
compared
there's
to,
something that's
you know,
creating
the
open
cost of the
space,
building as
guys.
a whole, so I assume that was not the motivation, so what was your reasoning behind wanting it to be covered rather than not covered?
Or
Because
just,
it doesn't seem to affect the overall economics of the building, why was the covered versus not covered?
right, well, the uncovered, the regular plaza bonus is already available. And the underlying M16 today, so we didn't need to do anything to make that available. The only thing we're doing is making the covered pedestrian space available. We're currently.
Was there interest or demand in developers want to build spaces with covered but not with uncovered?
We see, especially in the densest parts of Midtown, a lot of developer interest in doing covered pedestrian spaces. There are a lot of really high quality covered pedestrian spaces.
I will admit, I'm very skeptical of these high quality covered pedestrian.
Right, my God, like we're more than a line on that one.
We can send you images, a laundry list.
Some of our nights, probably on public space.
Where-
in the city are covered pedestrian
Yes,
spaces.
like the old IBM building.
Nobody in the building.
Yes, but that's-
550 Madison Field, somebody going-
It is so not the built environment here. It is so not the built environment.
But the choice is not between like an incredible public park and a
Yeah.
covered pedestrian space. The choice is between a covered pedestrian space and nothing.
Right, it's, I
No
think what
process.
Joe's saying is there really isn't the
It's not a
opportunity
green
in this
space,
physical
there's a
environment.
difference.
But so, but a covered space like 550 Madison, yeah, sure, it's beautiful, we just don't
So
have.
it's just, we're talking about full front,
Yeah.
block front buildings, it's not gonna happen in this location, we're gonna get dinky.
Come back to Liz's point though, Liz, is there anything that you wanna see in the letter, that we can,
Well,
I mean, I can't see.
I'm
how we
shocked
can.
that there's no environmental stuff on it, you know.
There is, it's a total deficit, and therefore, they're trying to remedy it by putting this piece of zoning text in, that's what's being done.
But I think,
No.
to Leslie's point, you know, one of the things is that we're talking about increasing density on 36th Street. 36th Street is a crosstown thoroughfare, a traffic crosstown thoroughfare between the Midtown Tunnel and the Queens Midtown Tunnel. It's, with our sidewalk space as it is right now.
The only place to do open space here, honestly, is really fully building out those Broadway plazas. And places where it's partially taken from the street already, and really making it fully built out as opposed to temporarily built out. But that's something,
We're working
right, that's public realm
with
we talked about.
our other departments, DOT, parks, our council member to hopefully
Right.
create.
I think what I'm hearing is like, we wanna figure out how to make this work. But there's some aspects of it that are devoid of, for lack of a better expression, guardrails. And, you know, Chris mentioned being from advertising, that's my background too. Brands have guardrails, even if they want you to change everything, you have to operate within certain lanes, and that's what zoning is. And I just am deeply concerned that while we're saying we don't think, and that's not our intention, so let's just figure out how to write that into the zoning, if that's not the intention. So we don't have to contend with that and go, oh, because even your report said here, when you rezoned the C6 4M, the hope was, the intention was to generate residential. And instead we got hotels. And that, I know, was never the intention of the planning. And that's what we got. So our rule here, all of us off the clock, is to figure out how to create these guardrails so we can address what we perceive as unintended consequences. And currently, there's unintended consequences.
Are any of the things we talked about tonight that are our concerns not in scope, similar to the height issue that you can think of? So we
Things
know
that are-
where we're standing and how we have to act.
Things that are not in scope.
Right, that we brought up that would be considered not in scope. Like elimination of pops.
The elimination pops is not in scope, so I'm gonna caveat that in the northwest quadrant in the Garment Center, there's currently a prohibition on pops along wide streets.
Okay.
That would be in scope to put that back in.
To put it back in.
Right.
To keep it in. Oh, sorry, to keep it as is.
To keep it as is.
Okay.
Similarly, there's a height cap in the M16D district. That's scope, there's scope to retain that.
And that's not okay.
And M160 is which?
That's 28th Street.
28th Street, right?
It's a little 2-block area.
What else?
So on that block, 28th Street, there's been recent residential development right across from FIT.
That was a rezoning that we did.
Right, and those buildings are really quite lovely.
Yeah.
And they fit in with the context of the neighborhood. They have a lot of architectural character, and they're not an 18 FAR. So, you know, if we could get to that, I think we are really close.
So,
Just, I need to understand the scoping thing. So I know that like city council does add things that were clearly not in original scope, because the city council thinks to do whatever they want. What is your role in that process? Can you say like, not in scope, but like, we thought this was a good idea? Particularly in the height limit of like, it could be a very generous height limit, but like many hundreds of feet, but like what? I recognize like in some legal sense, like you cannot put that in what you give to city council, but can you say like, hey, this is worth considering? Because we got a lot of feedback about it, and then city council can make their own determination.
They can.
So scope, it's a little bit technical. There's sort of two goalposts. The one goalpost is the zoning that exists today. The other outside goalpost is what was certified into ULURP, a few weeks ago. And what's in scope is sort of like what falls in between those two goalposts. So if today there's no height limit and we didn't certify with a proposal that has height limits, imposing height limits is not in scope.
But can you add
And
things that are not in the official proposal or presented to city council, but just as they like, we have received a lot of feedback on this, worth consideration.
So
I mean, I know we're doing that, I know, Eric, well. But I know.
City council asks for a lot. Sometimes those requests have to come back to the CPC to make a scope determination. And if it's not in scope after it comes back from city council, then it can't be added.
But they can do subsequently, do a FUCA, follow-up corrective action. And many times we've had zoning in our district that has not, things have been out of scope. And we had to get them added in, they couldn't be, they come back and do a subsequent action to put that in as part of the political discussion. Get something through.
Yeah, to answer your question, council is bound by the same sort of limitations that we are in terms of being able to introduce things that were not part of the.
There's some flexibility.
They have flexibility.
No, you have some flexibility, but not a lot.
Right, there is flexibility, but the council can't operate outside of scope, even if they.
We have to technically do it as a.
Right, but it just says, there's the possibility of coming back to do essentially a follow-up action and going through this process again to, you know, respond to concerns on things that weren't in scope.
And we've had many issues before where we had to go back and, like, but it's agreed at that point in time, Stanford. In other words, it's not agreed later as part of the
Yeah, no,
approval.
I understand what they, yeah.
There's an agreement, we will do this within so many months, whatever. You know.
So before we report to position,
Right.
on things that may not be in scope at this point.
So before we actually vote on the letter itself, I just wanted to give everybody a reminder that some of us are working in conjunction with CB5 and having conversations with them. Their timeline is different than ours. We are going to try to get this approved at our March meeting. They may not be done by then, so we're gonna be probably a little bit ahead of them. So we will coordinate. We're gonna coordinate with them, but we are going to be ahead of them, and so they may have some additions.
Right.
And so would this committee be supportive of some of the leadership making some adjustments to the letter based on the contributions from CB5?
Yeah, this will get it back before the March meeting.
Before the March meeting, but yeah, but like, because this list we created is going to be the basis of our letter. But there may be some adjustments based on conversations we have with CB5, and I just wanted to have that on the table before the vote on the letter. So that it can be public.
Just a quick thing for the sake of time, I don't know if this is the right. This is a scope of DES, but I think Leslie brought up, we haven't gotten into like environmental impact or pedestrian. Public health impact.
So Janine, could you turn to the next slide, please? I didn't get to the slide because we, wanted to get, next one, please. Next one. Okay, so we conducted a draft environmental impact statement. The DEIS identified no impacts with respect to the categories on the left box. It did identify the potential for significant adverse impacts to open space, shadows, historic resources, transportation, air quality, and construction. More details on that in the DEIS, and if you have more questions.
And there's no mitigation for those?
Well, we explore mitigation, what those will be between now and the draft EIS, which is.
And I'll just make.
Just highlight.
For the sake of time, I'll just make a short comment. I actually went through all this stuff. And community with the forest chair and you would support some written questions and some oral comments. For the most part, especially for the public health stuff, the response was, this is not a requirement to be studied. And not speaking for CB4, but I think it's good to have more housing and bring in more residents, but at some point in time, if you're adding 9,700 new homes, give and take this 2+ people in each one, that's 20,000 new residents. Where are these folks gonna get access to patient care services? What hospitals are gonna have access to? Because one hospital is downsizing, if you're gonna say they're gonna go over to Bellevue Hospital is already stretched to the max as it is. What's the response time for emergency services, and what impacts or what access to quality food and food deserts may exist? So I don't know if that's appropriate to put into the letter, but that would be a concern. If it's not appropriate, it's not appropriate.
May I add to his thing too? We always talk about this. I mean, look at people in the schools, where there's no school.
But I think
Well, they have a school.
But
No, that's only bonus.
But
But they have school answer.
that's stuff that we put into the environmental impact study review process, and this is a separate track.
Fair enough.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a separate issue than the.
Right,
Yeah.
we may want to highlight some of those.
I just think along.
Some
that-
context, we can frame context in this letter. And the impact on the environment as a.
Then I'll make a motion that this letter be written with the delineation of bullet points as articulated.
As they deny and list.
Yeah, I don't know.
Second,
I would,
Say no.
But
I'm gonna make a motion that this be approved with conditions.
Hold on, are we taking wasn't it seconded before you make a motion?
hold on, please. It was a motion and it was seconded. So that is the motion on the table right now, Sanford, that was the motion that was made.
I was talking about the letter, I didn't say deny or approve, so I was.
Okay, so your amendment was to write the letter, you seconded the letter, Joe said deny unless, you're saying approve with conditions. Which would you accept as the friendly amendment to your motion?
I will, yeah, then I'm seconding Joe's with denying less.
Okay, that's all right. So let's say it off the table a second. Let's just start again. Why don't you make a motion? I'll say nothing right now and then I can.
My motion was to write the letter with the espousing of the points that were made this evening, right? I don't know if it's mature enough without giving the answers to those questions to say yes or no.
Well, I just think that in any large zoning actions. Across the board, we have taken, and the largest zoning actions, Hudson Yards, West Chelsea, Western Rail Yards, we say deny unless we list all the conditions. It's not because we're against the intent, because I think there's gonna be a big preamble here.
I mean, then they just, for the sake of time, so we don't have to debate on this, can we just have a show of hands? We're gonna do two, deny unless, approve the conditions, okay? Deny unless, put your hands up, please. Approve with conditions, put your hands up, please. Okay, it's gonna be deny unless.
I mean,
And we're gonna put a lot of information there, why we like the idea.
that's just boilerplate, it's just boilerplate.
It's the boilerplate, it doesn't change the language of the letter, but the intro is.
The intro is all about, we really want this kind of thing to happen. Here's what we gotta fix.
I made my point. I believe when you write a deny unless letter, it sounds like you're against something, even though
I know.
we are mostly in principle in support of this. I respect the vote of the committee, but that is my belief.
Okay.
And that's why we keep on talking.
But, and you can, and put as much in as you can to the letter, right, like, let's get as much.
All of it is. All of it is.
Can I just make one note? Going back to Joe's question about the mechanical space and the voids. I wanna say that we're gonna get back to you with a more accurate answer. I was just looking into it, and sometimes with NX mixed use paired districts, the regulations are different, and so what I had communicated is for residential districts specifically, and so I just want to get back to you
These
on
are the
that.
tweaks we could figure out, to make sure, not an unintended consequence all the time.
Right.
All right, thank you. The motion on the floor. List of conditions that were read over, inclusion of additional commentary from CB5. Overall review of deny unless these stipulations are approved. All in favor of the motion?
We did it.
No, I did it. All I did was the.
No, I voted on deny unless versus.
You just want to, can you just,
I did not.
sorry to do this, can you read off all the conditions again on that list?
No.
No.
You know what's the recording.
What you said about-
No, I've read the list, and I said, anybody have anything?
We're gonna do a bulleted list. Yes.
You'll see.
The question is, what is married today?
Today?
Yeah.
You should have led with that.
What?
Today.
What?
I would have given you afterwards.
This is your honeymoon? Wow.
Can I motion to wish you well as married?
I mean, God.
There are so many people speaking, I can't hear what's happening.
Come on, dude, get out of here. You haven't even come for one up.
All right, please, guys, hello, I'm sorry, congratulations, best wishes, mazel tov. We're all volunteers here and we're starting to get hungry and we still, Leslie, please.
Okay.
Okay, then you don't complain when we leave late.
Sorry.
So, because we still have to go back to the first topic, which was our short topic, and there was a hand raised online and we haven't heard. Chris, did you have some commentary to make?
No, I just couldn't hear what we were applauding and mazel toving over,
All right.
You got married.
Listen, can we please have a vote on the motion? Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hands.
Sorry, which motion?
The motion that
Same
is
one,
presented
same
and
motion.
listed.
Same motion.
Easy.
And I was
Sorry, but like.
I know, we're all the time.
No, I'm with Paul. Oh,
Excuse me, I was just asking.
The motion that's on the table,
The motion regarding,
the list of items that we
yes,
discussed.
I was just asking about one of the list items, which is what are we saying about the 18 and 15 FAR?
We're
Saying it's
requesting
gotta
a
be
special
noticed.
permit and we're asking for additional MIH formulation, anything above 12 FAR. That was it.
Yeah, I'm sort of like opposed to the 18, 15, but I think we've spent enough time talking about this and sort of no one wants to discuss it. I don't think that we should be giving away 18 FAR in this area. I don't think this is the test pilot area for for the city's
Not
expansion.
the test pilot area. This is the marketing area for the city. It's nothing about the test pilot. This is the go every.
So let's turn out because I'm in agreement with you on there, but I want to talk to you more in detail about that. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, again, please raise your hand.
This is approval with conditions?
Deny unless.
I'm sorry,
Yes. Okay, I see all hands up. No, deny, anybody voting no on this? Any abstentions, any present not eligible? Okay, thank you, that carries. We're done with you, congratulations, mazel tov. Now, please, very quickly, hopefully we can wrap this up very quickly. There's been communication with, Janine. We asked the applicant, the previous discussion, if he would delay the application such that we could have this walkthrough and table the motion and bring it back. But he's the one who has to actually take the step to delay the application. So if he does not do that, and we're gonna miss our deadline of commentary.
Why would you not do it?
Just, whatever, he may go back to his clients, his clients may say, we're not gonna allow this, right? So I just want to.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
No, we're not. So the issue is, I just want to have a vote of this committee to say that if the delay is not get applied for and fulfilled, that we can write the letter incorporating all the points we made in the previous letter. So I just need to have a little formal vote on the approval of the letter.
I so move for a backup letter in case he cannot, delay it.
Okay, and documenting all the points that we discussed, all right, just a formal, so thank you.
And what is the letter saying? You're approving it? We're approving the kiosk?
Or
deny unless?
I would do it nine less.
Like we've done.
On this one, I'm
just like that we've done.
Well, no, we've done it with everyone here, with them.
All of them denying.
Yeah, but we're gonna have stronger stipulations than we had in the 2016 letter. The 2018 letter, we're gonna the language of condo finance review, so the individual. I got the whole list. Okay, so there's one final motion I'd be willing to entertain.
Would you agree?
Second to. Thank you all very much. See you all. Janine, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Let us know.
All right.
I was dedicated.